Hi, welcome back guys. This is your friend, the MHA What If with another fanfiction. This is the first part of What If Deku Gave Up on Heroes and Villains? All credits for this video go to their respective authors, so please support the real author. Check out the link in the description for more details. Please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this. Now let's get into the fanf. The country of Japan is in a rather bad state nowadays. It isn't quite a full-blown failed state, but it is getting dangerously close. That isn't a recent development. Japan didn't fare too well in the era of chaos immediately following the dawn of quirks, in big part thanks to a certain demon lord whose obsession for LARPing made everything objectively worse. Although his heroic brother and his followers, willingly or not, contributed, one side crosses another line. The other is forced to go even further to stop themselves from losing. The other side responds with the same thing. And so it continues. Most countries out there have managed to recover from their own experiences of the dawn of quirks era. Japan, however? The societal issues caused by the arrival of quirks were never truly dealt with, the wounds mostly patched but with a part of them continuing to fester. All for one, still hiding in the shadows and plotting the downfall of society, has contributed to that fact greatly. All Might's era of peace was a brief moment of light shining through. Brief in comparison, it was more than 2 decades, although this was still only a tenth of the time that has passed since the dawn of quirks. It certainly didn't feel brief for those who lived through it, who experienced 20 years of something resembling peace. Of course, it was peaceful in comparison to times before it. It was far from being peaceful in comparison to times before quirks. And then All for One died. And, to the surprise of most people that knew him, that was the start of things going from bad to worse. To Aizawa Shoyuda, however, the state of the country really didn't matter. At least at this moment. Because Eraserhead has a personal tragedy to deal with. And while he genuinely thought that what happened to Oboro taught him something about how to deal with grief, it isn't the sort of grief that he expected. An underground hero raid against an organized crime warehouse. This has happened before many times. So how did things manage to go so wrong? He lost 2 things that evening. The first one was 1/2 of the little finger on his left hand, which he admittedly could live without. It was just 1 finger after all. Ectoplasm retired from active service and focused on teaching after losing both legs. Compared to that, Aizawa's loss was meaningless. The other loss was erasure. His quirk. The quirk-suppressing bullets have been circulating on the streets for a while now. Always in small numbers, but with depressing regularity. Heroes had been doing their best to locate the source for at least a year now, with little success. The raid was a part of those attempts. It wasn't the first time that Aizawa was shot with a syringe bullet, but it was the first time that his quirk had not come back for several days. What he was shot with wasn't a quirk-suppressing bullet. He discovered that during a medical checkup with Recovery Girl. The old nurse was straight up horrified when she realized that erasure was gone. Eraserhead, just Aizawa Shoyuda now, probably, was apathetic to the discovery. He just emotionally shut down. Worse than after Oboro. Much worse. The panic caused by the concept of permanent quirk-erasing bullets in hero circles was nothing short of inspirational, obviously. The concept was too terrifying for anyone to comprehend at first, really. Nedzu of all people was horrified, probably imagining what would happen to him if he got shot. His quirk actually made him sentient. Eraserhead didn't even know that the principal could be intimidated by something. Eraserhead took a week off from school to figure out what to do with his life. The fact that Emi decided to not try to cheer him up with her jokes, typically assisted by her quirk, and instead gave him some breathing space was a telling thing. Especially as she also limited her patrols to be there if he needed it. Part of him wondered if she was worried that he would do something permanent. To lack your quirk, he just lost a part of himself. And, to be honest, he had no idea how to even begin to describe it to someone who didn't go through the same thing. He would rather lose an entire limb to this. It was tolerable when you knew it was temporary. Knowing that it was permanent was... He was watching the TV, more like staring in space absent-mindedly in front of it, to be honest, sitting on his couch, a cat sleeping soundly on his lap, when someone rang the bell of his apartment. And that, alone, was strike one. The whole apartment block is secretly owned and inhabited by a handful of veteran underground heroes. They were all grumpy, street-savvy and paranoid asses. You were happy when you were working for so long in this line of work and wasn't an emotionally crippled, PTSD-ridden wreck. Such people making a lot of strange and paranoid rules to keep their one holdout of safety safe was entirely in character. One of them is to knock, not ring on the apartment door. So that whenever someone did ring the bell, it was going to be a large red flashing warning sign. To be fully honest, this happened many times already, and it never meant an actual attack or a villain infiltration. 9 out of 10 it was one of the neighbors who forgot about the rules due to being drunk, or something like that. Not exactly a reason for alert. No one should be visiting him right now. Zashi and Nem were teaching at UA right now. The only other person to show up in his room was Emmy, and it couldn't be her. Because he saw her head poking through the kitchen's door. She did her best to fix Eraserhead's horrible excuse of a diet after they got married, with some successes, with a questioning expression on her face. It's probably Zashi and Nem. Eraserhead then said. If Nedzu or Recovery Girl let it slip what happened to him, his 2 dumbass friends probably rushed here on the spot. I'll open the door. Present Mike and Midnight still didn't know that Eraserhead, their best friend, was a married man. It wasn't that long, less than a year, really. And, besides, Emmy considered this to be a form of a practical joke played at their expense. They also have a how long it will take him and Namuri to figure us out bet going, so Aizawa let it slide. It was payback for those 2 pulling him into all those horrible social situations all the time. The situation on this field was clearly going to change, because Eraserhead has no idea how to explain Emmy Fukukado being in his house, with a terrifyingly colorful cooking apron on top of her clothes. Or it wasn't going to change. He was still an underground hero, even if effectively retired now that his quirk was gone. Paranoia is his way of life. He grabbed the capture scarf, always near the door, except when they go to sleep, because then it was right next to their bed, and approached the entrance door. It is pretty hard to break through, and has a very good lock. 3 in fact. He also looked through a peephole before opening it. It isn't Hizashi. Not Namuri, either. No one he knew, in fact. Instead he saw a small figure wearing a plain brown hoodie and old-looking black sweatpants. And a black face mask with a white number 1 written on it, which certainly looked like a support item. Eraserhead didn't recognize the guest. He didn't look like a hero, so it was either a vigilante or a villain. A single gesture and Emmy was there, standing 2 meters behind him. As combat-ready as she could be, wearing her standard homely dress and a cooking apron. So, knowing her, her punches and holds were brutal, and she was lightning fast. Eraserhead is, as already established, paranoid. He had a few more cameras placed through the building, and a monitor for them that just happened to be right next to his entrance door. He looked at it now, and there was no one else but their mysterious visitor in the area. Paranoia was all there, but cowardice wasn't. Whoever the guest was, he knows where Eraserhead lives. He managed to get all the way here, despite looking suspicious as hell and the building being a hotspot for underground heroes. Confrontation had to happen, but he could minimize the risks. Who are you? Eraserhead asked loudly. Loudly enough for it to be clearly audible on the other side of the door. For obvious reasons, he isn't standing right in front of them, but to the side, with eyes still on the camera feed. My name's Vox. The answer came back a few seconds later. The voice sounded like a teenager. Not particularly threatening, though considering the circumstances. I've come here to give you your quirk back, Eraserhead. Full stop. Nobody save for Nedzu, Sir Night-Eye, Emmy and Recovery Girl knew about him losing his quirk. Sir Night-Eye was the head of the investigation into whoever is producing the quirk-suppressing bullets, so he had to be made aware of the new development. Nedzu knows because, well, he is Nedzu. Not telling Emmy would be illogical to the extreme, and Recovery Girl was the one that diagnosed his quirk as gone for good. They are all good at keeping secrets. Yet Vox clearly knows about what happened. That leaves only one option. I'm not working with the people who did that to you. Vox came to the same conclusion as Eraserhead, but spoke about it first. Aizawa froze for a second. The voice he heard now was completely different from the one he heard first. This time it was the voice of an elderly man. I can see the silence where your quirk was from here. You might have heard about me being called the quirk healer. Once again Eraserhead's mind ordered a full stop. He'd heard of the urban legend. His job made him spend half of his life on the streets, and he met many villains. Some of them easily counted into the most superstitious people out there. It was a form of a subculture, in a way. The quirk thief, for example, was a common urban legend for decades, a man, or woman, capable of stealing quirks to make themselves stronger and all that. Bullshit, but an intellectually entertaining one. The sort of curious story to talk about to kill time before the heist. Whether he wanted to or not, he heard a lot of such urban legends. The quirk healer is a relatively new one. Someone out there, capable of fixing quirks, changing the way they express themselves and a lot of other things. But he, or she, only popped up when someone had a seriously debilitating or dangerous quirk. Showed up from nowhere, repaired the quirk in question and then vanished into thin air. Typically after a brief exchange of words, and an agreement on a price, on some online forum after one confessed to having problems with their quirk. This never happened to a hero, or a policeman as far as Eraserhead was aware. He also didn't hear of any confirmed case of a villain confessing to have met or seen the quirk healer. They were supposed cases among civilians, but those were generally shrugged off as minor quirk reawakenings. And now, the supposed urban legend showed up in front of Eraserhead's apartment, wearing a hoodie and speaking in several voices. Or, at least, a teenager claiming to be an urban legend did so. Emmy stays silent. To not betray her presence, she was waiting for him to make a decision. She wanted to avoid scaring the chance away. Aizawa looked back at her and nodded. She nodded back. They were a pair of pro-heroes. Against them was a teenager, most likely. If that was an assassination attempt, they were going to deal with it. But if Vox was telling the truth, Eraserhead felt deeply wrong without his quirk, as if a part of him was missing deep inside him. Confirming the existence of the quirk healer would also be an important bonus, as would be learning how he found Eraserhead's little fortress. All right, Eraserhead said after turning towards the door again. I'm going to open the door. Make no sudden movements. He unlocked the door and opened them up. Vox stood there calmly, not saying a word and not moving up at all. The only movement Eraserhead could see was his chest moving a bit as he breathed. Not a lot more to add about his looks, despite getting to see him up close. The disguise, especially the mask, was solid. Vox could see Emmy now, but he made no reaction. If he could see quirks through a wall as he claimed, he probably saw her before entering. Come in, Aizawa said while he took a step back. Slowly, Vox obeyed. Aizawa pointed his finger to the point in the middle of their living room, as the self-professed quirk healer moved there obediently. Emmy was busy observing the guest attentively. With a smile on her face, she always had it, but he knew that she could easily break a man's jaw in 3 seconds without breaking her smile for a millisecond. The atmosphere was tense, that's what everyone in the room could feel rather clearly. Except for Eraserhead's cat, because Yoshi took that very moment to appear out of nowhere and rub herself on Vox's leg. Yoshi had no sense of the atmosphere, but Eraserhead trusted her opinion on people. He would have made his cat into his sidekick if it was possible, because Yoshi was just so good at judging people. She has only ever hissed on a single person, and he just happened to be a villain mole among the underground heroes. Eraserhead actually suspected a quirk, because her track record was just too good. So, how does your quirk work, exactly? Eraserhead decided to interrupt the silence finally, but not before he gestured at Yoshi to shoo off. The cat, somehow, obeyed the instruction. Vox decided to not comment on it, but Aizawa could see Emmy's tip of the mouth trembled, just slightly. I can alter the quirks of the people I touch? Vox replied. I'm not going to elaborate on what exactly I can do, but restoring your quirk should be possible. I'll need no less than 30 seconds of uninterrupted physical contact and you'll lose consciousness for the duration of the process. Dangerous. There were many nasty touch-based quirks out there. In a way, quirks were mostly balanced. Stuff like insta-killing, healing, or a more thorough mind control tended to require physical contact. Prolonged one meant that the quirk was even stronger than average, at least typically. Just being able to kill people by looking at them would be way too powerful. Why did you decide to show up? Eraserhead continued the interrogation, secretly wishing for Mesa to just pop out from nowhere in order to confirm Vox's answers. You know that if you use your quirk on me, I'll have to arrest you for illegal quirk usage. For some reason Aizawa was certain that Vox didn't have a license. Neither as a professional doctor nor as a recovery hero. And ever since the insurrections 2 years ago, the issue of quirk usage was treated very seriously. I came prepared, Vox replied. I avoid heroes and villains as a rule. However, someone I greatly respect used to know you in the past. He told me that you are a good person. Someone to trust. Someone to break my rules for, if needed. So I did so. Someone that used to know me? Eraserhead asked, trying not to display on his face how dumbfounded he was with the answer. He had no idea who that person could be. He knew a lot of people, well, most of them were behind bars due to being villains or were his former students. Who exactly? That's not important anymore. Vox replied immediately. He is dead either way. I've decided to help you in his memory. I'm not even going to charge you for the treatment. So, are we doing this or not? I don't have the whole day. Which was probably something like, I can't be sure that you didn't push a panic button and hero reinforcements aren't on their way, but in simpler words. Eraserhead weighed the danger against that slight flame of rekindled hope deep inside him. He could see that Emmy was firmly on the tell no don't be stupid side, and he couldn't blame her. But she wasn't the one who spent the last several days feeling as if a crucial part of their body was missing. Despite thinking that it was a horrible idea, she was letting him make the decision. Frankly, Eraserhead barely noticed his finger being missing. The other thing that he lost burned too much. He couldn't even describe the feeling properly to convey what a torture it was. And despite the few days to recuperate, it stayed the same. He wasn't getting used to it. He would risk a lot to get it back. Fine. I'll lay down on the couch. Emmy stared at him with visible worry and horror. But once again she said nothing. 20 seconds later Eraserhead tasted colors. Eraserhead opened his eyes, fighting back the feeling resembling the morning grogginess of a mind, but significantly more pervasive. He could see Vox sitting on a chair next to the couch, and Emmy right behind him, probably ready to chokehold him if he did something suspicious. It's done, Vox stated. Your quirk is back. Eraserhead could feel it. The burning, the itching, the scratching, the unfeeling feeling of emptiness that kept pestering him for days was gone. Gone. He activated his quirk and he could feel it as he used to. Emmy gasped in shock, so the external signs of his quirk being activated were probably there as well, while Eraserhead wonders internally how on earth did feeling his eyes itch make him feel so endlessly happy. He absolutely hated it just a few days ago. So, Vox interrupted his thoughts a moment later. What happens to me now? You felt calm about it? It didn't feel like a resigned calmness, however. More like a confident one. It might have been the voice alteration at play, however. For now, the situation was still rather tense. That's one hell of a question, kid. Aizawa replied. Because, kill him, but he had no idea how to proceed with this situation. No police or hero guideline that the Eraserhead knew about covered the scenario of having a cryptid in your living room. Sure, the cryptid in question appeared to also be a teenager, but, legally speaking, Emmy then said, the woman stood behind Vox, probably ready to try to grab him if needed. We're obligated to learn and confirm your identity before contacting your parents and... So, she decided to be the bad cop on this, presenting the option that the kid was going to be against obviously, just for Aizawa to offer some more palatable alternative. Eraserhead wasn't used to being a good cop, but he could do that if needed. The idea was sound. It just had one major issue, it didn't work. They are dead. Vox interjected. Well, things were going just splendid, it seems. Your caretakers, then? Emmy replied after exchanging worried looks with her husband over Vox's head. That would be me. Vox replied. I'm my own caretaker. What now? He was either lying or testing them somehow, or he might have as well been an adult, independent earlier than most of them. The situation was still complicated. Very, very complicated. Hiding a quirk of this magnitude wasn't easy. Unless you were really smart about it and managed to predict dangers far ahead, the reaction of your child developing a really powerful quirk was to announce it to the world on Facebook. And that was really hard to backtrack out of. Basically impossible to do without any evidence left behind. But there were no names attached to the quick healer urban legend. Node Guy X announced that their child awoke a similar quirk before doing their best to call it off story. So, this option was out of the picture. The alternatives to that were people that were smart enough to realize that this was a dangerous quirk, and managed to successfully fake the quirk registry entry. The people doing that were almost uniformly villains. That's because there were government agencies that provided fake entries and general protection for people who had valuable quirks. That's what law-abiding folks did when they awoke a quirk that was this powerful. A good example of that was Momo Yaoyorozu, the class president of the class that Eraserhead was made a homeroom teacher of. With an ability to create any matter at will, she was worth her weight in diamonds. Sure, she might have wealthy families and good security, but no one was ready to take the risk. As a result, the official quirk registry for Japan stated her quirk to be creation, but it also stated that she could only create a very narrow amount of things due to limits on mass and materials involved. Basically speaking, that her matryoshkas were all she could make. To learn the truth, one had to penetrate the secured network, and that was about as easy to get in as the one that contained the identities of people in witness protection programs. Especially in the current political climate, not showing your skills in public during the school festival when your quirk was as valuable as creation was also perfectly understandable. In short, if you didn't want to get into heroics, you could live your whole life while keeping your quirk secret. Easily. But if Vox's quirk really could alter quirks, then hiding from the government too was a logical action. Eraserhead would do that as well. But if Vox was hiding such a quirk from everyone, why would he be using it, just enough for the urban legend to be born? Things were fishy. Using the quirk to any degree threatened him with villains noticing his existence. And yet, he was doing it. Normally, he was supposed to be paid. He claimed to lack any caretakers. This sounded as if he was a runaway, living on the street and earning money with their quirk, technically, a small-time villainy. Such a quirk on the street? It was a material for a disaster. Of biblical proportions, most likely. I'm genuinely grateful to you for helping me. Aizawa replied eventually, Vox watching him without a word. But I can't ignore a child that might as well be living on the streets. I'm going to have to ask you to come with us willingly for a proper identity check. I guarantee you that if you're on the run from your legal caretakers, we're ready to invoke the Hero Custody Child Protection Act and ensure that HCCPA was a controversial act, but it technically allowed an active hero, which meant being a member of a respected social group, with a solid part of training similar to police officers in matters such as the law, to seize temporary custody of a child when there was a very serious risk of them being abused or endangered in their family. Basically speaking, on the spot. Of course, there were some serious legal limitations, such as the whole deal only lasting for up to 6 months, which was enough time for a court case to be pushed through. In most cases, from Aizawa's experience, it was performed with teenagers, especially with mutant quirks, villainous quirks, weak quirks, or no quirks at all. Nowadays at least, that ran away from homes and, when a hero ran into them, had stories to tell. The sort of stories that made the hero go hold up and decide to investigate things first. Technically, for as long as HCCPA was involved, the hero wasn't legally obligated to inform the parents that their child was found. That was a big thing to offer. Aizawa wouldn't even consider it. He didn't consider himself to be an overly parental type, and social services existed for a reason, if not for the risks that his quirk posed. But Vox clearly wanted to have none of it. Touching, but I'm going to have to refuse. Vox cut in before Aizawa could finish. I'll be going then. Aizawa opened his mouth to reply that it's not exactly his decision to make, but that's when 2 grenades bounced off the floor right next to Vox. Eraserhead and Ms. Joke actually froze for a second because they were professionals. That came completely out of nowhere to them. Vox wasn't searched, they didn't want to spook him before the treatment was over and expected to have all the time for it afterwards. But they saw no space in his clothes for goddamn grenades. They were used to knives and guns. Vox took advantage of that and leapt over the nearest couch. Ms. Joke dived behind him as Eraserhead's capture scarf wrapped around the grenades and threw them in the opposite direction of the room. Or tried to, as that's when the grenades exploded. Vox must have pulled the pin on them a second or two before throwing them. One of them was a smoke one, the other a flashbang. Eraserhead was temporarily blinded and deafened, Ms. Joke partially so. She was faster than him. She would have to consider retirement if it wasn't the truth. But the kid was closer to the balcony window, clearly his target, then gained a slight more advantage with the grenade trick. And the balcony window was open. He had enough time to jump over the rails. Ms. Joke practically screamed at that. It was a 5th floor, he could die, before she could grab him. She immediately looked down, only to see nothing. Vox was gone. Just vanished midair. What the hell? Nedzu seems to be genuinely surprised to see Eraserhead in school during his days off. Especially considering the reason for said days. However, he also reads the sense of urgency on the underground hero's face, so he doesn't ask any questions and instead focuses on organizing an emergency meeting. A meeting that is going to be composed of Recovery Girl, Sir Night-Eye and Detective Tsukachi. Eraserhead is certain that Nedzu understands from the group make up the implications even without knowing that Naomesa's team had been dragged into Eraserhead's house this morning and tasked with looking for evidence without being told in detail why. Sir Night-Eye probably does so as well. After all, he showed up. Eraserhead being there and asking for Sir to show up, well, it implies a connection to his current chief source of headaches, the quirk erasing drugs. Eraserhead has something of a complicated work relationship with Night-Eye. He has enough funny people in his life. And, personally, he finds Sir Night-Eye's occasional moments of humor to not be very funny. However, in professional terms, Sasaki is a giant on the field of investigation and worked closely with a lot of underground heroes. He had also been the sidekick of All Might, the symbol of peace. That was important. Now, let's set things straight. Eraserhead doesn't like Yagi Toshinori. Their characters simply don't mesh well, and there's no joint backstory to smooth those issues for them, like he has with Present Mike. But All Might? Eraserhead has professional respect for All Might. Because, while All Might acts like a friendly himbo in front of civilians, he is focused, sharp and often sounds almost as jaded as Aizawa is while in private. The professional respect is not only for All Might as a hero but also as a teacher. He has been fumbling with many things ever since starting his teaching career at UA a few months ago, but he's going to become a great teacher, just don't expect Eraserhead to say that openly. In Aizawa's opinion, All Might could as well be the patron saint of lessons on controlling your quirk to avoid accidentally killing or injuring bystanders and causing excessive collateral damage. As expected from a guy who can change humans into paste with a bit too enthusiastic handshake. Those two having worked together implied a lot of positive things about their eye for talent. And that makes Eraserhead respect them even more, even if he still isn't going to admit that openly. Eraserhead, Sir Night-Eye says when he enters the room. To the rest he only nods. You look significantly better than the last time we saw each other. Yes. Ever as observant. Does he already suspect that erasure is back? Quirk erasure drugs turning out to not exist, after all, would make his life significantly less troublesome. He just doesn't want to get hit by Recovery Girl's cane for questioning her professionalism, so he doesn't say that openly. Yet things changed? Eraserhead replies. Tsukachi was giving them all questioning looks from the background. He doesn't get the memo. Tsukachi, before we start, a quick note. You remember me being shot with that quirk-suppressing bullet during the last raid? Yes. Tsukachi nods back. Let me guess, I was lied to and that's why you were gone from active work ever since? They are all smart and competent people. And it shows. Yes, it turned out to be a quirks-destroying bullet. Eraserhead replies, taking perverse joy in the detective's eyes shooting wide open. Working just as you clearly imagine it to work after hearing the name. Except, well, there were developments. He decides that the best way to explain said developments is to activate his quirk. And so he does, this time finding pleasure in the expressions of shock from Sir Night-Eye and Nedzu. It fuels his engine. Only Recovery Girl is unfazed. She already went through the shock phase when he visited her earlier for a checkup. No way he's going to have a talk like that without having a confirmation that his recovery is permanent. Before someone says something, Recovery Girl decides to act before someone questions her professionalism. Right in time, since Sir Night Eye obviously has the question on the tip of his tongue. I have no idea what happened, but I stand by my earlier diagnosis. However, I also confirm that Aizawa's quirk is completely and fully back. Considering we were all invited, we can assume that Eraserhead has something to tell us about his recovery. Yes, I do. Eraserhead replies. He doesn't like speaking to a group of people, even such a small one, but in this particular case he doesn't have any alternative. I was visited in my home yesterday by someone claiming to be the quirk healer. That urban legend? Sir Night Eye, of course, knows about it. Recovery Girl obviously doesn't, but oddly enough Nedzu seems just as lost. He probably considers this degree of urban legends to be beneath his interest. Evidently yes. Eraserhead replies dryly, before he turns to Recovery Girl and Nedzu. There is an urban legend claiming that if you speak about having problems with your quirk on the internet, the quirk healer will show up and fix them for a price. In money, not in blood or something, for the record. Even in the most normal of circumstances, the quirk healer is invaluable to any group with access to his services. When you are facing the concept of quirk-destroying drugs being fired in the direction of pro-heroes, doubly so. Judging from the almost terrifying degree of interest on Nedzu's face and how focused Sir Night Eye is on Eraserhead's face, he was right in this assessment. Tsukachi is probably aware of it as well. Anything to identify them by? Sir Night Eye goes for the throat. God, I wish, if he was my student I'd give him top grades for disguises and identity concealment classes for that single stunt. Eraserhead replies honestly. Those are something that second-year hero students receive. Useful both for underground heroes and the limelight ones, although the latter typically use them to avoid paparazzi. Hoodie and a pair of jeans, both of them completely nondescriptive, so we can't hope to track him through that. Face mask that completely covered his face, and was clearly using a support item with a voice-changing function. Tsukachi's forensics team failed to find any leftover DNA or literally anything else that could help us. All that I can tell you is that he was built like a teenager and that he might have dark green hair. Might have dark green hair? Sir Night Eye asks, his eyes squinted. Ms. Joke was visiting me at the time. Eraserhead replies. Hopefully they won't dig into this and figure out that he was just being visited by a coworker. She thinks that she saw a lock of those under the hoodie when the kid was jumping off my balcony, but she isn't perfectly certain. Especially not right after we were both blasted with a well-timed flashbang grenade. That gets him some weird looks. Yeah, he got a flashbang grenade, and not just that, detonated in his living room. He isn't actually happy about it either. If someone has managed to successfully infiltrate your own house and escape to tell the tale, especially someone with such disguise skills and the foresight to prepare a grenade for their escape, it's not impossible for the hair color to be faked to throw the hounds off their tail. Sir Night Eye decides a few seconds later, once again proving that Eraserhead's respect for him isn't a mistake. However, if he used a flashbang with an intent to blind you both, showing their fake hair color afterwards doesn't sound like a logical plan. Fair point. We share the outlook on it, Eraserhead admits. He had some time to think it over before the meeting. Quirk Healer, who by the way introduced himself as Vox, had the foresight to take both a flashbang and a smoke grenade with him. He detonated the former to blind me and seal my quirk and gain some space, which also gave the time needed for the smoke grenade to cover the whole room and seal my quirk completely, in case I was only partially blinded by the flashbang. That was good planning, and doing the hair trick after blinding everyone felt weird. What if he was banking on the cameras to catch it? Nedzu asks at this point. And yes, that is one more thing that Eraserhead had considered already. Ms. Joke claimed that the visible part of the hair was so small that it shouldn't be caught by any camera, especially not when it happened while the kid was jumping off the balcony. Eraserhead replies. Right now everything's pointing towards the kid making a very good plan, but not taking into account the fact that when jumping off the balcony, an upward gust of wind inflated their hoodie and made the side of his head visible. Nedzu's fascination is clearly growing to an unhealthy level, since that's pretty much the age of the UA students and he's probably imagining how useful a student like that could be. Especially with the degree of foresight and planning skills this visit required. Sir is much more subdued. They truly have very little to work with. He claimed that his quirk lets him alter the quirks of others on touch, though it requires prolonged contact. Eraserhead decides to return to the main subject. He refused to elaborate on what he can do with them. He also stated that he could see the, and I quote, hole where my quirk was through the door, but hard to say how literal that was. But it is heavily possible that he can detect people through their quirks at a distance. I had Ms. joke with me, and he didn't appear fazed by her presence. She knows that we'll have to involve her in this investigation full-time after this, right? Sir Night-Eye asks, interrupting Eraserhead. Yeah, she now knows about the quirk-erasing drugs. Or, to be exact, she already knew about them, they just thought that she had only found out when she saw someone heal the resulting injury. Yes, she does. Eraserhead replies, before switching back to his summary of the event. Vox also claimed that he avoids heroes and villains as a general rule, and only broke that rule in my case because of some unspecified mutual acquaintance of ours who said that I'm a good person before dying. Of course, he refused to elaborate on that. Eraserhead then sighs painfully. Opinions? We have to find him as soon as possible. Sir Night-Eye replies instantly. It's not even about him violating the laws on quirk usage. We don't know the degree of changes he is capable of, but regardless of the scope, this is a completely one-of-a-kind quirk. He claims to have been avoiding villains, but if he falls into the hands of one, then the results will be nothing short of disastrous. Knowing where he is, what exactly he can do, and that he is adequately protected is the absolute minimum. Eraserhead can only agree. What if Vox could make your quirk stronger? Like a human trigger, but semi-permanent? That's a threat to the continuous existence of Japan if it falls into the wrong hands. And he could think of many wrong hands. I completely agree. Nedzu chirps in. Unless we find something truly nasty in his closet, finding him and persuading to strive for heroics sounds like a perfect idea. If his quirk works as we suspect, he would make for a perfect recovery hero. One of a kind, in fact. Nedzu's probably imagining what could be achieved with such a person on his payroll. Altering and fine-tuning the quirks of the students. They all have powerful quirks already, at least those who get to the heroic course, but it's not like they have no limits. Or problematic activation triggers and so on. This gives Eraserhead an idea. Something for later. He already has 2 of them by now, but he's going to wait for what Sir Night-Eye and Nedzu have. Agreed. Detective states flatly, the man giving them all a rather tired look. Do you think he is from the Mizudafu area, or was I invited just to confirm your story? He was probably doing something important when he was called to UA. Yeah, it's not as if he had a lot to help in thus far. His friends from forensics found nothing. Him being from the local area is a possibility. Eraserhead replies. We might also need some assistance from the police in this. Sir nods. Tsukachi's slightly reassured, but still looks mopey. With the sort of chaos that most of Mizudafu is in nowadays, that's probably unsurprising. Vox is important, but it's also a priority job that will make him able to spend less time on his day-to-day job. You should start by running him through the police database. Sir decides to give him the work that, hopefully, shouldn't take too long. Dark green hair, age 14 to 18. Since he is doing his best to hide his abilities, it's possible that he is listed as quirkless or with some minor quirk that's easier to fake, like analysis or intelligence. It is also an option that he only admitted to having certain parts of his abilities, like detection of people. Tsukachi nods back. But it isn't the end of Sir Night-Eye's words. I'll search through the internet. He continues. Perhaps he left some traces when finding his normal jobs. But considering the number of forums that he might have been job hunting on, it's going to be a tough order. Especially as many people probably make up stories about him for attention, since he is an urban legend after all. Anyone else have any ideas? We don't have much to go along with. Eraserhead is willing to agree with that statement. Vox has been quite thorough in hiding himself. He literally walked into Eraserhead's apartment, used his quirk illegally and then vanished. Aizawa's equally amazed by the balls required for it and irritated by the gall of that kid. Aizawa, how exactly did he escape you after jumping off your balcony? Nedzu decides to ask the right question. He vanished. Aizawa replied dryly. Literally, vanished. Fukukado was at the balcony's fence maybe a second later, and he wasn't there. I suspect a warp quirk, so he probably has some helpers, but he shrugged. Contrary to popular opinions, warp quirks aren't that rare. However, you don't see a lot of them in this line of work because most of them are weak. Imagine the ability to, say, teleport bread within your line of sight. Not very useful. Those somewhat stronger could still have debilitating weaknesses. Like, say, horrible accuracy. Imagine being able to teleport someone at the distance of 100 kilometers, but not being able to pinpoint where exactly they were going to land. Which means that a possible destination forms a circle around your present position. What is rare and valuable are precise long-distance warp quirks, especially if they lack or have low cooldowns. It's entirely possible that there was an invisible teleportation field placed around Eraserhead's balcony in advance, ready to warp everything jumping off to a single destination. Today, the only known long-distance warpers are Sachiko Hirose, also known as Long Jump, an S-rank hero by the new system, Hiroyuki. Sawa, also known as Spiderweb, another S-rank hero, and Eclipse, SS-rank villain and head of the Quirkless Liberation Front. Each of them, aside from the last one, have their own sets of weaknesses. This, however, is most certainly not such a mighty quirk. Such a field might have as well been placed by someone walking past the building a few hours earlier and glancing up for a few seconds. The range was possibly small, could as well lead to some abandoned building a few hundred meters away, where Vox could change his clothes and leave, looking completely different. I see. Nedzu nods a few times, clearly reaching a similar opinion about the warp quirk to Eraserhead's. If he didn't warp to your house, he had to approach it on foot. I'll look through CCTV cameras. Maybe we'll find where he came from that way. That's a good idea, and something that Aizawa didn't think about. I have two more ideas. Eraserhead decides to admit it finally. It's either that or he'll feel as if his professionalism is endangered. First, he said that he keeps away from villains and heroes. I can't help but wonder if the omission of the word vigilantes was accidental or is there a reason for it. When Eraserhead was finishing UA, vigilantism was almost absent from Japan. Today, it's endemic. Heroes, vigilantes and villains are now the three sides of the coin that once used to be a normal two-sided one. It could no longer be ignored. Makes sense? Sir nods. Vigilantes tend to ask few questions and aren't as prone to abuse as villains. Eraserhead thinks the same. Vox certainly has a problem with heroes for some reason, and he has no idea what it is. One more thing he'll probably have to deal with before Nedzu gets his dream employee. What's the other thing? Nedzu clearly wants to get that kid to use his quirk to help his students. Eraserhead replies. Help is a much less problematic way of putting it than produce stronger graduates or expand his little army or something else. How sure are we that he didn't already do that? He gets a few seconds long silence as a first response. Oh dear. Nedzu's the first one to regain his ability to speak. So many powerful quirks in one building. The chance of one or more of their users having problems with them at some point is indeed quite large. And considering how much quirk strength and heroic image are valued in modern times, Eraserhead continues for him. There is a fair chance that whoever went through that preferred to keep that a secret, especially as UA is seen as an elite school. Not to mention the part where employing Vox is technically a crime. We can as well try to ask around. So many kids? Sir Night-Eye clicks his tongue and immediately points out the flaw with the plan. The chance of someone finding out that we're asking odd questions seems a bit too much. I'd prefer to not draw additional attention to the words quirk healer. Sir is sometimes a bit too blunt. Scratch that, way too blunt. Eraserhead doesn't really care. I can do that smartly, you know? Eraserhead replies, trying not to sound vaguely insulted. I'll give my class an assignment, let's say a presentation about the quirk-oriented urban legends. I'll make sure that someone brings up the quirk healer, and look for odd reactions in the crowd. I'll also mention how there is always a possibility that an urban legend has a grain of truth to it, and that if you know something that might be connected, it's best to admit that to a hero, since it might be important. We'll then have other classes go through the same thing. Wonderful idea. Nedzu chirps in. You never know when a quirk-related urban legend is a decently covered truth. Eraserhead prefers to not notice the flinch on Tsukachi's face and the slight scowl on Tsunitai's. Whatever it is about, he doesn't want to know. Unless it's about the quirk healer. It seems that Eraserhead has found another problem child to deal with this year. HeroNet is a useful means of establishing and maintaining communication, used widely by the heroes throughout the country. It's chief among all, secure. The communication network itself shares most of its infrastructure with the Japanese military and the police force. To hack it is nearly impossible. The only real danger comes from some dumbass losing their access terminals, but those are bio-coded for a reason. As a result, the villain sometimes got in, but to actually get something useful out of it? Rare. If only logging in wasn't such a pain in the ass. Right, he's in. Eraserhead sits back on his chair in the UA's teacher's lounge and starts typing words, getting ready to send his first message in the chat room opened by Sir Night-Eye for this particular investigation. Eraserhead, I have an announcement. Sir Night-Eye, any progress on the case? Eraserhead, actually yes. Eraserhead, found a former patient of Vox in my class. Nedzu, who is it? Eraserhead, Hagakure Turu. Nedzu, invisibility quirk? Eraserhead, Eraserhead, some form of light refraction, but basically yes. Sir Night-Eye, what did she say exactly? Eraserhead, apparently she was permanently invisible before and began to go slightly crazy due to not even knowing how she looks like and regularly hitting things with her hands due to often not knowing where exactly they were. Eraserhead, plus the bit where she wanted to become a hero but felt odd with the fact that she would probably have to go around de facto naked. She is still embarrassed by nudity even if no one sees it, plus temperature is a problem. Eraserhead, 1 year ago she heard of the quirk healer legend and mentioned her issue on few forums. Eraserhead, standard MO according to the legend. Eraserhead, contacted her on one of the forums, asked for details of the problem, said how much it will cost, and then they agreed to meet in some park. Eraserhead, described the procedure, prolonged physical contact, temporarily unconscious, some odd sensations, I remember tasting colors while he worked on me. Eraserhead, she lied down on a bench and woke up 30 seconds later being able to activate and deactivate her invisibility at will. Eraserhead, he told her to tell people that her quirk reawakened, took the money, said goodbyes and left. Nedzu, oh dear. Sir Night-Eye, oh dear indeed. This confirms that he can actually alter quirks, not just heal them when they are damaged. Sir Night-Eye, this is a Class 6 quirk. Eraserhead, they exist? Misjook. Surprised face. Sir Night-Eye, not a common knowledge and don't quote me on this, but they do. But I don't think there are more than a handful of those worldwide. Sir Night-Eye, All Might has one. Star and Stripe has one too. Sir Night-Eye, the best way to define them is quirks that violate the logic of quirks. If not the logic of the world. Typically by allowing one to do things with other quirks. That's a new thing to Eraserhead. Officially, the model length scale measures the strength of a quirk and divides quirks into 5 more or less distinct classes, from 1 to 5. Naturally, strength of a quirk is a rather imprecise term, especially with how many quirks are effectively connected together in a rock-paper-scissors way. That's why the 2 scientists working on it during the dawn of quirks decided to find a more universal gradient of strength. So, they took a few major families of quirks, telekinesis, fire quirks, and mental quirks, and worked on their basis. While grading the quirks on the basis of 3 main categories: output volume, activation restrictions, and adaptability. The first measured how powerful a quirk was when used, the second one how restricted its activation condition was, and the third one how much a human could alter their details with their own imagination. Class 1 are quirks that aren't actually quirks, and are better described as functional vestigial adaptations to quirks. For example, having a pair of horns, typically inherited from an ancestor with a bull or cow-themed quirk, on your head means that you have a Class 1 quirk. You can use them for nasty headbutts, but that's all. There is nothing really supernatural to them, aside from the fact that pre-quirked humans didn't have them. Class 2 are quirks lacking in all categories. An example for telekinesis would be the ability to attract small objects to your hand. Small objects, so the output volume is very low, and so is the weight that you can manipulate. Only to your hand, so your adaptability is very low. The activation restrictions are severe too, because you can only influence non-living things of a small volume. That is a very restrictive condition. Class 3 classification requires at least a decent score in one of the 3 categories. An example here, at least for telekinesis, is the quirk of Reiko Yanagi from this year's Class 1B. It has a low output volume, as she can only control objects that sum up to 80 kg, and can only control small and non-living objects, so her activation restrictions are pretty severe. However, once she moves something, she can move it in any direction she wants, allowing unrestricted movement in space around her, even if she doesn't see the influenced objects directly. This means a high adaptability factor. Class 4 means that your quirk scores well in 2 categories at the same time. Here, the best examples are Captain Celebrity and Invincible, 2 tactile telekinesis demigods of the modern era. Their telekinesis have an incredible output volume and reasonable adaptability, as they can do a lot of things with it other than just flying, but they can still only influence themselves and things, or people, that are in direct contact with them. This means that their activation is still rather restricted. Class 5 telekinesis quirks would bestow upon you the free ability to generate telekinetic fields all around you and move them at your will, making you into a natural all-rounder capable of creating telekinetic shields and armors, fly around, strangle your enemies like Darth Vader and restrict enemies in close quarter. Meaning high output volume, high adaptability and nearly unrestricted activation. The whole class system is still a guideline more than anything else. It works best for more conventional quirks, like telekinesis mentioned above, and sometimes fails in extreme cases outside of that. It also doesn't involve complex mutants. However, the scientists behind did correctly point out that most quirk awakenings involve the lacking component among the 3 main categories, giving it some basis in real life. By general rule, most hero schools don't accept students that had quirks of class 1 or 2. In the case of UA, it is a bit more flexible and depends entirely on the entrance exam. An example of an exception to the rule this year is Masahiro Ajuru, who has managed, through very good preschool combat training, to get in despite having what is effectively a Class 2 quirk. It would be a Class 1 quirk, but his tail strength is way beyond what it should be biologically speaking, so it's classified as an active quirk rather than a vestigial mutation. Eraserhead genuinely thinks that the classification makes sense in, at least, the broadest of senses. Guidelines more than strict rules. Besides, the definition of high level of base category is hard to quantify. Invincible, for example, might have an effective Class 4 quirk, but the sheer output volume of his quirk was downright terrifying. Some modern quirks amass so much raw power that there are talks that they should be given 2 points in that one category, upping them up in class. After all, the classification was created early on into the dawn of quirks. Quirks have grown stronger as time has passed. Things have slowly stopped working well with the classification system. And now he heard about Class 6. That makes his opinion about the classification very complicated. It also makes him wonder what a Class 6 quirk from the telekinesis branch would look like. Maybe it would allow one to move quirks between people? Shit, suddenly the quirk thief urban legend doesn't sound even nearly as fabricated. Sir Naitai, this merely proves that we have to find Vox ASAP. Sir Naitai, anything else you learned from her? Eraserhead. 1. Vox also listened to her clothing issues and said that it's not a problem and that the support course of a hero school could just weave her suit out of her hair or infuse her DNA into her clothes to make them vanish with her. Sir Naitai. I think an intern of mine got something similar to deal with his quirk issues. Nedzu. Yes, but this isn't a well-known solution. If Vox thought about it on the spot, it indicates that he knows a lot about support items. If not, there is an option he knows someone who is knowledgeable in that field and can answer his questions. Misjoke. Being a quirk analyst / support engineer with a quirk like his sounds like something absolutely logical, winky face. Eraserhead, too. He actually contacted her again 2 days ago and asked some questions about me. He mentioned that something happened to me and he could help, but he needs to know what sort of person I am. Eraserhead, she didn't tell him where I live or anything particularly incriminating as a whole, and he didn't even ask. Eraserhead, he wanted to know if I'm a good teacher, if I permit any form of bullying, like for quote-unquote villainous quirks, among students and so on. He seemed to know that I expel many students and wanted to know why. Eraserhead, she apparently said that I'm stern but fair, and have a strict no-bullying policy. Eraserhead, also that I'm scary and threatened to expel the entire class on the first day, but that I told them that I'm doing this because being heroism is dangerous, and if I'm not 100% sure that they are ready for it, they are better off looking for another job where they won't have to risk their lives so much. Eraserhead, also it turns out that some student dug out my stats and they know that my graduates have some of the lowest work casualty rates and highest successful arrests rate in the country. Ms. Joke, busted laughing face. Eraserhead, my reputation of a scary and uncaring teacher is ruined, yes. Eraserhead, he thanked her and said that he will try to help me, then vanished, literally. He deleted the account he used to contact her. Eraserhead, I'll send it Sir Naitai the link to the forum he contacted her on. It's a small forum for hero fans apparently, on a private message. Sir Naitai, please do. Tsukachien, what does that tell us? Ms. Joke, that Vox is extremely paranoid and seems to have some serious issues with heroes and probably schools as a whole _. Eraserhead, Nedzu? Ms. Joke, some acquaintance of his told him that Eraserhead is a good guy, but he still probed around him to be 100% sure of it, and didn't even try to see if he would let him go after the treatment. Straight face. Ms. Joke, instead poof and he is gone. Ms. Joke, him asking about school policy on bullying is also telling. Ms. Joke, UA is literally the #1 hero school according to 90% of people living in Japan. Ketsubutsu is still better, deal. With its tongue sticking out, but he still suspected one of its teachers to be an ass and a bullying enabler, not to mention a hero teacher. That alone makes people think you are inherently trustworthy. Eraserhead. In short, even if we find him, making him trust us enough to consider going to UA might be a bit of a problem, Nedzu. Nedzu, you might be right. Very much so. Nedzu, I'll also quickly add that I finished checking out Hagakure Turu's history and I confirmed that her quirk clearly couldn't be deactivated until about 1 year ago. Sir Naitai, this just proves how important it is to find him ASAP. Tsukachien, alright, I finished combing through the police database and I might have a potential hit. I'm just not sure if it helps us a great deal considering the circumstances. Nedzu? Oh? Tsukachien, Midoriya Izuku. Green hair, green eyes, quirkless. Born March 28, 2238, lived in Mizudafu Ward until he and his mother, Midoriya Inko, 30, perished in a tragic house fire on the 9th of December 2250. Tsukachien, he would be 17 years old today, birthday 5 days ago, which fits Eraserhead's estimations of Vox's age. Tsukachien, I took the liberty of visiting his former neighbors. Turns out that Midoriya Izuku was an amateur quirk analyst practically from birth. He filled entire notebooks with analysis of every interesting quirk he came upon, the first one apparently written with crayons. Tsukachien, I also found out that he was bullied in school for quirklessness, and his school was actually supporting it. Eraserhead, well shit. Tsukachien, wait until you hear the best part. Tsukachien, the chief bully and his former best friend, from before the diagnosis, joined the UA heroic course this year. He is in your class. Eraserhead, what? Eraserhead, I need it for reference. Nedzu, and the name of the school. Nedzu, also for reference. Sir Naitai, please don't kill any children. Nedzu, what about the school? Sir Naitai, did I say anything about the school? Nedzu, splendid. Tsukachien, Bokugu Katsuki. But apparently Izuku's death shook him out of it. He told his parents about what he was doing and they were horrified by the school not only tolerating it but also covering up all tracks and all but encouraging their son to bully the son of their best friend. Therapy, anger management classes, different school etc., so you might want to have an eye on him but not instantly expel him. Tsukachien, Aldra Junior High. Make it burn, Nedzu. Nedzu, gladly. Eraserhead, I'll keep that in mind. Eraserhead, do you have any pictures of the kid? Here. Tsukachien, here you have the estimation on how he would look like today. Eraserhead, 60 to 70% sure it's a hit. Sir Nightai, are you sure? Eraserhead, as I said, 60 to 70% sure. Eraserhead, I didn't see his face, but at least the body build feels similar and it's the same shade of green hair as what Ms. Joke remembers. Tsukachien, so it's likely that he didn't die. I guess I'll have to reopen the investigation into the house fire, but it might be a bit hard without any evidence. And we can't just admit what happened to Eraserhead in public. Nedzu, don't bother, Tsukachi. Nedzu, I finished investigating the CCTV. I can tell you that he came from the west, but I lost track of him 750 meters away from Eraserhead's apartment block, so I have some free time to spare and this conundrum appears delightfully interesting. Nedzu, I'll look into the house fire on my own, just send me the police files of it. Tsukachien, on it. Nedzu at Sir Nightai, how is the internet part going? Sir Nightai, bad. Nedzu, how bad? Sir Nightai, very bad. Nedzu, oh? Sir Nightai, he is extremely good at covering his tracks. He is either very knowledgeable about computers, knows someone who is outsourcing the client gathering to someone else, or is working for someone who has skills/money to buy them. Sir Nightai, I'd need to invest a lot of resources to have any hopes of tracking him and, frankly, I suspect that this would fail spectacularly. Worst of all, he would notice that he is being tracked and would probably vanish on us. Sir Nightai, the only way of tracking him that I can think of is to try to set up a false job offer and hope he'll catch the bait. But considering how incredibly paranoid he has proven to be thus far, this might be hard to achieve. And once again, if it fails, he'll be alerted and might disappear from the grid entirely. Sir Nightai, it's also extremely likely that he is going to be twice or thrice as paranoid now that he betrayed his existence to a pro-hero with ties to UA. Sir Nightai, I am monitoring the known hunting grounds for someone asking for a quirk treatment in the meantime. Nedzu, so this leaves us with a house fire investigation and vigilantes. Eraserhead. Eraserhead, okay, so I might have forgotten to do it, but I can do it right now and call you back in a while. Eraserhead, I'll contact you back later. Just as HeroNet is a blessing to the heroes and their acquaintance when secure telecoms were involved, the VillainNet is a, moderately, safe haven for those on the other side of the law. Its existence is a mystery. It is something as old as quirks themselves. It's the world's newest and most pervasive iteration of the dark web and no one actually knows how it works. It just does. For as far as Eraserhead was aware, Island has yet to locate the hardware responsible for its continuous operations, much less figure out how it works. Yeah, it's that bad. As one can expect, VillainNet is the main subject of some of the most outlandish urban legends. The craziest one that Eraserhead has ever heard about claims it to be the product of an ancient governmental conspiracy responsible for the birth of quirks, with its hardware located in the one place that hasn't been corrupted by heroism, space. As in the outer space. The guy who made that theory even had pictures of some supposedly artificial structures on the moon that were supposedly housing the VillainNet's hardware, together with the sapient, or not, AI that was moderating and administering it. With a fleet of invisible satellites, created by said conspiracy at the time when human technology was at its peak, orbiting the Earth in secret and providing the necessary infrastructure for the global communication network, while remaining untraceable until mankind recovers its technological knowledge. In short, an entertaining load of bullshit that was taking advantage of the fact that human technology received a massive blow during the blackout, a late dawn of quirks plot by some amprims with a powerful technopathic quirk that crushed the internet and wiped out almost all data on the banks connected to it, to justify what was essentially an ancient cosmonauts conspiracy theory in a new package. The VillainNet is sometimes used by the underground heroes, with Eraserhead himself using it to infiltrate some villain crews. Because oh boy, sometimes those idiots were suicidally talkative on the internet. It is, however, using it only as much as hunting random people with a hunting rifle in a national park is visiting the park. The moment you are reported by some confirmed villain to be a hero in disguise, you are going to be inevitably kicked. The moderators always know if the accusation is right. Somehow. But the vigilantes? Oh, they could use the villain net openly. After all, from the legal point of view they are villains. So, business as usual, if you exclude occasional hateful spam, which only lasted until the vigilante reported it to the moderators, as their opinion about internet spam resembled Eraserhead's opinion on disco music. The rest is a matter of sending a message to an appropriate vigilante through one of his backup villainnet accounts. Although vigilante is legally slander nowadays, yeah right. But it was still enough for them to have to make an alternative account and hide who they are in public to avoid ban. Nap needed, unranked. Send invitation to the chat to Mighty Fanboy, unranked. Mighty Fanboy, unranked, joins the chat with default nickname of Mighty Fanboy. Mighty Fanboy, new phone who dat. Nap needed, problem child. Mighty Fanboy, oh Aizawa. Should have started from that. Boy changed Mighty Fanboy's nickname to Crawler. Crawler changed Nap Needed's nickname to Dadzawa. Dadzawa, please don't. Crawler changed Dadzawa's nickname to Donzawa. DW changed DW's nickname to Eraserhead. Crawler? Crawler. So, what sort of technically illegal things are we up to today? Eraserhead, illegal things? Crawler, you would have sent me a message on the HeroNet if it was legal. Crawler, so you're not contacting Skycrawler, chief sidekick from Invincible's hero agency. Crawler, you're contacting Crawler, Knuckleduster's XO in the Vigilante Alliance. Eraserhead, does your boss know you're moonlighting as a vigilante? Crawler, it came up in the talk when Skyline agreed to let Invincible borrow me for help in organizing his hero agency. Crawler, Invincible had no issue with that for as long as I'm only helping Knuckleduster with organizational affairs rather than show up in my vigilante gear to beat people up in the back alleys. Crawler, besides, he gets the hottest of intel from the Alliance through me, leading to Endeavor's occasional bouts of delicious RAGE about his upstart competitors somehow having comparable sources to him. Crawler, I'm having fun here. Crawler, so what's up? Eraserhead, I need help in a priority assignment from Nedzu. Crawler, grabs popcorn. Crawler, phone. Eraserhead, it's a local thing in Mizudafu. Eraserhead, I need anonymous contact with the local branch of the Alliance with you as a guarantee that I'll be treated seriously. Crawler, why aren't you in contact with them yourself? It's literally your hood. Eraserhead, it's called plausible deniability. Eraserhead, also if I start to rely on local Alliance assets I'm going to get more and more involved with them. Eraserhead, and they will feel validated in their activity with the presence of one of the head honchos of the underground network around them. Crawler, head honchos. Stop borrowing jokes terms. Eraserhead. Eraserhead, then some of them will die and I'll feel like it's my fault. Crawler. Eraserhead, so I could just drop by Monochrome's flat. Yes, I know where she's living and she can't hide from me. Eraserhead, but I prefer to contact you and keep the regular hero approach to vigilantism on the outside. Crawler, alright, fine. Crawler. MA5 and Bow, unranked. Send invitation to the chat to Monochrome, ranked. Monochrome, straight. Rejected the invitation. Crawler. Eraserhead, would you accept some random guy's invitation to your chat? It displays your account's official name on the outside. Crawler, I'll have Popstep send her a message. She has an official verified account here. Give me 5 minutes. It wasn't even 5 minutes. More like 4, and Eraserhead was being polite here. MA5 and Bow, unranked. Send invitation to the chat to Monochrome, ranked. Monochrome, ranked, joins the chat with default nickname of Monochrome. Crawler, please don't panic. Monochrome, Crawler-sama, I'm so sorry. Eraserhead, and she panicked. Crawler, it's not Sama, I'm not that old. Crawler, and it was my mistake, I wouldn't accept invitation from randoms either, chill. Monochrome, Monochrome, Omfki Eraserhead. Eraserhead, only noticed me now? Monochrome. Eraserhead, skill issue. Crawler, stop learning memes from Ms. Joke, I'm begging you. Eraserhead, let me enjoy the fact that no one's ever going to believe you that I'm capable of using them, even if you provide them with screenshots. Eraserhead, Also, I'm planning to wait for a week or two before appearing in the middle of the night in front of one of my students in the boarding houses before T-posing in front of them without a word and then disappearing. Eraserhead, no one's ever going to believe them, and you can't do anything to stop me. Crawler, you're a freaking monster, Eraserhead. Crawler, the monster. Crawler. Monochrome, did he traumatize you too? Monochrome. Only if you consider being hunted by someone for sport in the dark alleyways of Mizudafu a form of trauma. Crawler. Crawler. Trust me, he would have arrested you if he wanted, he's kind of vigilante-friendly. Crawler. More of a new guy hazing, I went through the same thing. Monochrome. I had nightmares about him for weeks. Eraserhead. This means it worked. Eraserhead. If you weren't good enough to survive in Mizudafu's streets, I'd use other means to get you off them. Monochrome? Eraserhead, I prefer to keep my arsenal an intimidating secret. Eraserhead, also don't expect me to go easy on you from now on. Monochrome, I fail to imagine you as going easy on anyone. Eraserhead, good. Crawler, you had a question to ask about your investigation, Eraserhead? Eraserhead, Eraserhead, I'm looking for someone. Eraserhead, 16 to 17 years old, might be a runaway but hard to say, access to some unexpected quirks and a good hacker. Dark green hair, dark green eyes, quirk classified. Monochrome, nope, sorry, what's his name? Eraserhead, we believe him to be Midoriya Izuku, although he is officially dead, but he calls himself Vox. Monochrome, still nope, clothes? Eraserhead, hoodie, a pair of jeans, a face mask that can change voice with a white number 1 on it. Monochrome, Monochrome, fuck. Monochrome, drop it, whatever you're doing, just drop it and don't get even fucking close to that, nothing is worth the risk. Eraserhead, Monochrome, left the chat. Crawler, nanny the fuck. Crawler, old man, why the hell do you keep stumbling into the weirdest things ever? Eraserhead, I have no clue. Crawler, give me 10 minutes to get her back here, I'll send Popstep after her. It turned out to be almost 20 minutes this time. And, if the message he got from Crawler was anything to go by, a direct order from Knuckleduster of all people was required for it to work. MA5 unranked, send invitation to the chat to Monochrome, ranked. Monochrome, ranked, joins the chat with default nickname of Monochrome. Monochrome, whatever is going to be said here, you didn't hear it from me. Eraserhead, Monochrome, you're looking for the numbers. Eraserhead, numbers? Monochrome, a bunch of kids, 8 to 18 years old, most seem to be between 12 to 16, there is always a face mask with a number of it. Monochrome, they are downright an urban legend in the seedier parts of Mizudafu as a whole. Monochrome, they seem to be hanging around the Dagoba labyrinth. Monochrome, the entire point of the legend can be summed up to pretend they don't exist for your own good. Eraserhead, what? Monochrome, have you ever heard of the Bermuda Triangle? Eraserhead, no? Monochrome, that's a region of a sea near the US that people believed to be haunted. Monochrome, ships vanished without a reason, planes too. Monochrome, a few decades ago they figured out for certain that there is some sort of chemical on the bottom, don't remember the name. Monochrome, when there is an upheaval of the sea bottom, it gets released upward and it temporarily alters the composition of water to make ships just dive through it at the spot, all the way to the bottom of the sea. It can even do similar shit to down planes. Monochrome, but it was so random and rare that it was almost impossible to be seen in practice. Monochrome, numbers are the Mizudafu's Bermuda Triangle. Eraserhead, please elaborate. Crawler? Yes, absolutely, we're like 5 minutes in and it already sounds incredible. Monochrome, they generally don't seem to do anything, they just hang around in the alleyways. Monochrome, they avoid problems, that's for sure. Monochrome, no crimes as far as I know about them, I even heard that some are sometimes volunteering in some soup kitchen, and I think that a lot of the older ones are part-timing here and there. Monochrome, legal stuff, just illegal working arrangement as no one does any paperwork and no one pays any taxes, that's for sure. Eraserhead, I assume that mistreating their workers when said workers are numbers is a bad idea. Monochrome, no one fucking does that, it's like running a protection racket with extra steps. Monochrome. Hire a kid with a numbered face mask and suddenly all local villains develop selective amnesia and forget you exist. Monochrome. It basically pays back on its own and made them popular with the locals. Monochrome. Heroes and police probably failed to notice their existence because of them not doing any crime and just vibing where the police typically don't go. Monochrome. But whenever someone tries to attack them or do something mean to them in general, the attacker disappears and is never seen again. Eraserhead. Seriously? Any examples? Monochrome. Someone from the Carnage crew, a rank villain with some B-rank sidekicks, attacked a number and pursued them into an alleyway while drunk, looked like a 12 to 13-year-old kid, didn't know what they wanted to do and I probably don't want to know. Monochrome. Half a year ago, I think. Monochrome. His friends were drunk and didn't follow until 15 minutes passed and no one came back. Monochrome. They didn't find him, no signs of him, just an empty alley. Monochrome. 3 days later Carnage figured out that they might be hiding him in the labyrinth, so he took his entire crew to look for his man. Monochrome. No one ever saw them again. Eraserhead. Are you kidding me? Eraserhead. The entire police thinks they either skipped town or were recruited by the Meta Liberation Army or some larger crime syndicate from Tokyo. Monochrome. Nope, I know for certain that numbers got them, I just have zero clue what they are, and I can list about 35 villains, just typically of a lower profile than Carnage and his men, that disappeared like that before him. Monochrome. There is a standing order for the Vigilante Alliance members in Muzutafu to ignore everyone with a numbered face mask. Just pretend they aren't there, and they'll do the same for you, plus keep as far away from the Dagoba labyrinth as possible. Disengage immediately if you are fighting someone and get close to the labyrinth to avoid accidentally injuring a passing number, etc. Monochrome. As far as I know, local villains tend to act the same. They are mostly scared shitless of the numbers but won't talk about that to people because, well, those are kids and being scared of them is shameful for a villain. Monochrome. I once saw a group of hardened criminals, including some B-rankers, go silent and move elsewhere in a hurry because there was a teenage girl with a numbered face mask going down the street with a grocery bag. Monochrome. Another time some guy robbed the street vendor stall before finding out that the guy had a number part-time since literally yesterday. Monochrome. That guy brought the money back 3 days later and apologized while begging the street vendor to make sure that the numbers won't make him disappear. It's that fucking bad. Monochrome. I know for certain that heroes aren't excluded from the treatment though. Monochrome. You remember that asshole Slugger? Eraserhead. Yes, I thought that he vanished because someone came forward with a testimony that he was a quirkist who used his position as a hero to beat people in the seedier parts of the city for wrong quirks. Eraserhead. Numbers? Monochrome. A vigilante was investigating him for that. Monochrome. Slugger went after a kid with a numbered mask into an alleyway, with some nasty intentions probably. Monochrome. Vigilante heard the kid scream, a while later Slugger screamed. Monochrome. When the vigilante ran into the alleyway, they were both gone already. Monochrome. I heard a gossip that the lower the number on the mask the more important you are among the numbers, but that's unconfirmed, and spotting a single-digit number is almost unheard of to begin with, and whoever is number 1 is something that people gossip about really quietly and only among the closest of friends. Literally no one ever saw him or her. Monochrome. The only lead I have for you is the fact that I know for certain that Longshot's hero agency was involved in some incident with the numbers, but things went dead quiet afterwards and I have no intel on that. Monochrome. Just don't go into the labyrinth. I have no clue what's going on there, but it's probably dangerous. Going to the labyrinth is pretty much a Muzutafu villain's slang for committing suicide and or doing something horribly stupid for a reason. Crawler. You always run into the weirdest things, you know that? Eraserhead. Ugh, now I need to explain that to the great rat himself. Eraserhead. Just ugh. Eraserhead. Keep things quiet for me, Crawler. Crawler. No worries, not my town, not my problem, and you clearly have it covered. Crawler. Contact me if you need more help. Crawler. Or contact Monochrome directly. Monochrome. Please don't involve me any more than this, please. Eraserhead. I'll think about it. Eraserhead. Unbelievable. Sir Naitai? Eraserhead. Apparently there is a street gang of kids and teenagers in Mizudafu that completely avoided notice of heroes despite having street rep that makes groups of B-rank villains go silent and flee the scene when they see a girl that's part of it because they are more afraid of her than they are of top heroes, probably. Eraserhead, and that's unbe-fucking-leavable. Ms. Joke, what? Nedzu, indeed what? Eraserhead, the name is numbers, they are recognized by numbered face masks. The lower the number the more important you appear to be, and Vox had a number 1 on his so he might be the leader, and vigilantes and villains in Mizudafu alike have a standing order to pretend they don't exist because whoever attacks them disappears without a trace, typically on the spot. Eraserhead, they apparently did Carnage's crew, the rank plus 7 B ranks, in, and about 35 less important villains. Eraserhead, and Slugger too. Eraserhead, Slugger tried to go after a number member into an alleyway, the vigilante following him heard him scream and then he was gone. Carnage lost a crew member similarly so he gathered his entire crew to storm what's suspected to be the number's headquarters and no one ever heard from them again. Eraserhead, no one in Mizudafu knows what the numbers are about and no one wants to know, people just pretend they aren't there because they are terrified of them. Eraserhead, Local Vigilante Alliance has an official pretend they don't exist, ignore their presence, don't talk about them's policy in place on them. Eraserhead, the VA coordinator from Mizudafu left the conversation after screaming at me to drop it, and Crawler had to involve Knuckleduster in person to force her to speak with me again. Eraserhead, and that's unbelievable. Eraserhead, also before someone asks if the vigilante will stay out of it and not talk about it with anyone, I have Crawler's word on it and I trust it. Tsukachien. Are you certain of this? Police would have noticed them doing crimes. Eraserhead, that's the point. Eraserhead, they don't do crimes. Tsukachi, excuse me but what? Eraserhead, they don't do crimes. Eraserhead, they just hang around in the seedier parts of the city, where no one bothers. Reporting odd kids to the police. Eraserhead, shit now that I think about it, I think I saw a few during my patrols, but they weren't doing anything illegal so I just ignored them figured out that the masks were some new fashion or SM. Eraserhead, that only makes villains and vigilantes even more confused about them. Ms. Joke, probably explains why nobody noticed them, I think. Ms. Joke, no crimes, and it's not like villains will admit that they are scared of some children. Eraserhead, the Alliance thinks the same. Sir Naitai, this is actually fascinating. Nedzu, oh indeed it is. And it probably explains the part where Vox apparently keeps away from heroes and villains alike. Nedzu, he has his own faction to speak of, enough to keep himself hidden and protected, but doesn't commit crimes. Technically speaking, even Slugger's disappearance sounds like self-defense considering what he did to people in private. Nedzu, disappearing people with a quirk is an act of villainy, but he might perceive that differently. Nedzu, any leads? Aizawa? Eraserhead, several. Eraserhead, 1. Everyone knows or at least heavily suspects that their stronghold is in the Dagoba Labyrinth. Go to the Labyrinth is basically street slang for suicide/horrible decision at this point though. Eraserhead, I knew the saying, I just figured out that it was about getting lost in the labyrinth, not this. Eraserhead, 2. Some of them apparently volunteer at some soup kitchen, the other workers might know something, others are part-timing in various other establishments around the labyrinth. Eraserhead, 3. Gossip that there was some sort of incident between Numbers and the Longshot Hero Agency, but Alliance doesn't know any details. Eraserhead, storming the labyrinth right now sounds like a bad idea. For the record, Ms. Joke, agreed. If an A rank with so many B rankers was done in there, we need to investigate very thoroughly. Hell, I probably wouldn't move in without some of the top heroes on a standby, just in case. Sir Naitai, yes, especially when we know that there is a Class 6 quirk involved. Sir Naitai at Eraserhead, any chances for you altering your patrol route enough to go around the edges of it? Without trying to enter it? Just to see if they are truly hanging around it? Eraserhead, can do. Eraserhead, I probably shouldn't go to a soup kitchen with my intimidating face, though. Ms. Joke, I could drop by, no one recognizes me in my civilian outfit. Ms. Joke, I'd volunteer for a few days, then start asking questions, or perhaps observe the numbers present, without trying to apprehend them. Nedzu, good idea, but you have to be extra careful. The soup kitchen that I believe to be the one involved is about 5 kilometers away from the labyrinth, and that's outside of the suspected Vox's range of quirk sight. But if the numbers get suspicious about the new person, Ms. Joke, I get it, I'll be extra careful. Nedzu, good idea. What about point 3? Sir Naitai, I'll visit the Longshot Hero Agency. I happened to work with them once in the past, nothing actually notable, but they should recognize me. Nedzu, I'll continue focusing on the Midoriya's house fire investigation in the meantime. Nedzu, get to it people. Eraserhead, I hate it when he is this enthusiastic. After his talk with Monochrome and Eraserhead concluded, Koichi Himawari continued to be the infamous, former, vigilante crawler for about 3 minutes. Then he logged out of the villainnet and put his special phone in a locked shelf of his desk, officially turning from crawler to skycrawler. All of that on the 5th floor of the hero agency belonging to Sugita Kenta, known for about 3 years as SSS rank hero Invincible, which also made him one of only 3 heroes of this rank in Japan, alongside All Might and Endeavor. Crawler didn't really have an opinion on the new hero grading system that came into effect about 4 years ago. It did have the big positive of making Endeavor chill the fuck down a little with his work, although only after a while. And he was still very competitive. Seriously, Enji Todoroki's utter meltdown at the HPSC Gala for the top heroes where this was announced was apparently a thing of legend. Something about demanding an alternative way of grading heroes within the rank to promote hard work. Skycrawler, regretfully, wasn't there for obvious reasons. He would have killed, maimed, he was a pro hero now, for a recording of that. Anyways, he walks out of his office, wearing his full hero uniform, including the face visor that acted as a shout-out to Captain Celebrity's hero uniform and protected his face well, and heads towards the office of the head honcho, to borrow Eraserhead's words, of this establishment. Invincible is sitting behind his own desk. Now, the best way to properly describe that man was to do so by comparison. He was a goddamn Superman ripoff. Thank you, Endeavor, that was on point. That was, in fact, the point. Sugita Kenta did his best to appear as a Japanese equivalent of that ancient pre-quirk superhero. Which, to be honest, was at least partially still accidental. Let's just say that the fact that All Might has shamelessly borrowed Clark Kent's color palette made aesthetic design choices much easier. Kenta could pick a similar color and score 2 aesthetic shoutouts for the price of 1. Even his haircut was clearly inspired by one Henry Cavill's rendition of Superman in one of the antique superhero movies that Kenta was so much of a fan of. It was all a solid choice of aesthetic that meshed together into a proper and marketable hero persona. He was also 34 years old, which made him more than 10 years younger than Endeavor. The fact that at this age he could measure up to the Flame Hero in terms of skills was probably the main reason for Todoroki Enji's near-instinctual disdain for Kenta. Also, he was buff. Not All Might level buff, but certainly Endeavor level. Crawler, with his much scrawnier physique, kind of envied Invincible on that one field. Kenta was doing exactly the same thing as he was doing before Crawler excused himself for his other job. Namely, he was painting a figurine. And before someone asks, it was a figurine of a character from an antique, pre-quirk, superhero film. American, of course. Invincible was, by all intents and purposes, a worse fan of the United States as a civilization than All Might, and that was saying a lot. Crawler learned to ignore that by now. I thought you'd be gone by now, Crawler says while walking into the office. He was honestly planning to just peek in, confirm that Invincible was gone and then leave to do something else. But Invincible was still there and looked back with an unspoken, "Please go on. You still remember the bank heist? It's starting in an hour." Now, that might sound somewhat controversial. After all, why wouldn't they stop the heist from happening if they knew that it was going to happen? But in this case, it was a bit of a special situation. The villains that were planning it had a nasty reputation and a few bad things that they most certainly did, but managed to avoid leaving sufficient evidence to get arrested. We talk one of them has likely murdered his lover, but we can't prove it level. They were slippery. One of them had a quirk that, when activated, allowed them to rewind changes to the surrounding world at will. Imagine breaking a window to get into a house, except a moment later the window reconstructs, and all the smaller changes, like fingerprints, just vanish. But you're already on the inside. That's why after confirming the fact that the bank was going to be targeted, the police and heroes secretly replaced the staff members and clients with undercover police officers and were waiting for the villains to walk into a trap, catching them red-handed and properly jailing them once and for all. It was a dangerous way of going with that. After all, they couldn't warn clients about it without warning the villains, meaning that even if they make sure to send people off as soon as possible, there was a minimal chance of someone being caught in the crossfire. Avoiding that was the reason why they wanted an SSS rank around. I got a message from Dead Record. Apparently the heist's delayed because one of the villains got into an accident this morning. Invincible replies. Dead Record was the second most important sidekick of this agency after Crawler and was currently on the scene. One of the heroes is tracking them constantly, and they won't get anywhere before at least 2 more hours. Invincible started his agency with almost no idea on how to actually lead an agency. He mostly figured it out by now, in big part thanks to Crawler being there with his experience of working with Captain Celebrity. His progress showed. Anything interesting? Invincible then asks, his eyes finally off the figurine on the desk in front of him. Aside from an apparent urban legend investigation that I promised not to talk about with anyone, nope. Crawler replies, a shit-eating grin growing on his face with every word. Regretfully, I don't think that All Might's involved, so your hopes of maybe finally getting a team-up mission with him won't be fulfilled. Look me into my eyes and say that you wouldn't want to have a team-up with the symbol of peace. Invincible replies dryly. Crawler finds himself unable to say that. You were beating villains in alleyways for years while wearing one of his hoodies. I led the revolt of HPSC's prized private army because I wanted to be a hero like him rather than get involved in the late president's shady backstage stuff. We're both terminal fanboys here. Right, that was hard to disagree with. Crawler sighs loudly. They were really 2 peas in a pod on that one field. It still feels weird for that woman to be gone and the HPSC being actually halfway decent and useful nowadays, doesn't it? Crawler replies with a question. He still remembers ranting with Knuckleduster about how horrible HPSC was, back in Narahata. And God save the bystanders if Stendhal was there to join it. Geaton skewering her to death with his ice spears during the insurrections was possibly the only good thing that man ever did in his life. Just don't expect me to say that openly. Invincible replies, sounding surprisingly venomous about it. He then clicks his tongue and clearly decides not to continue the subject. Invincible was the strongest among the Paragons, the secret personal army, if you can call 200 people an army, of the previous HPSC president. People like Lady Nagant and Hawks, trained in secret to become the ideal heroes, eventually. In the meantime, they were kept off the books and continuously trained. Probably for a coup that would make her the God Emperor of Japan, knowing the ambitions of that woman. But then, when the MLA began to launch their own coup and the HPSC demanded help from its paragons, Invincible refused to follow its orders and called Nedzu for orders from someone that might have been a pro-hero and a good guy instead of being Geaton's competing supervillain, pulling a lot of his peers with him. The insurrections were a messy few months. No one really wanted to dwell on that, especially not the 2 people currently present in the room. Their present position in Japan was built entirely on Invincible telling a high-ranked government official that they can go die in the ditch. Keep being involved if you can. Invincible decides to return to the more pleasant subject. If you can get us both some team-up with All Might, that would be the best and probably a highlight of our lives. Just in case, though, try not to ruin our image among Nedzu and Eraserhead Circle, alright? I'm not the PR threat here. Crawler replies dryly. Invincible gives him an expressionless look. Do you want to talk about a certain big-titted big-gun-holding cowboy waifu body pillow? Invincible stares at him without a word for a full 5 seconds before telling him to just go. Crawler does so, but is cackling the whole time. The soup kitchen was small, but for as much as Ms. Joke's experience with those went, it was decent. Decent maintenance, decent funding, decent food. Some regulars, most of them the local homeless and those that lost their living in one way or another. To be fully honest, This part of Mizudafu was bad. Japan wasn't doing awfully well nowadays, and the chaos in the aftermath of Giton's failed insurrection made everything worse. Western Mizudafu declined into complete slums, especially following the reassemblers' rampage that caused massive destruction and property loss that drove a lot of business outside of it. Eastern was doing better, but that might have been because at the easternmost part of it was UA. But for as long as you were on the wrong end of the Hosu River, named after a city 300 kilometers to the north of Mizudafu, oof. It was the villain's territory nowadays. The law here was occasionally working. It was the sort of area that limelight heroes didn't patrol as that was begging for them to get shanked. The sort of area where underground heroes dwelled, because you didn't want the villains to know where to find you as a hero. Despite that, the soup kitchen, financed by some charity from Tokyo, was operating unabated, with none of the locally active villains showing around. Ms. Joke knew how to do a good disguise and operate a convincing false backstory. She appeared at the soup kitchen looking haggard and clearly overwhelmed by human activity around her. Perfect impersonation of a hikikomori that was forced to leave her house and interact with people due to poverty. Not knowing how to interact with people and clearly not having any regular job, which, in turn, meant being eventually reliant on a soup kitchen for food. This also made sense for why locals didn't see her around earlier. When someone did mention that, she staggered out how she was from the next Mizudafu ward over, but some scary people hanged around her usual eating place and she freaked out and left. It seemed to work well enough. She dropped 3 days in a row, still clearly overwhelmed with the sheer scope of social interactions. Not asking any questions, just hanging out in the background of the main room and eating her food. In short, doing her best to blend in and start appearing as a part of the environment. She was actually considering her next move already. She was going to stop showing up for a few days. It would make it look as if she was overwhelmed a little with the soup kitchen and hide in her home for a few days before showing up again when hunger forced her. And that's when the kids with numbered face masks show up. Whole 3 at the same time. That sounds like a mission well done. Even if for now she's going to focus on strengthening her false identity's backstory by simply being there. It's way too early to try to interact in any way. Or, well, that was the original plan, at least. Ms. Joke, I can confirm the part with the numbers volunteering in a local soup kitchen. Eraserhead? Oh? Ms. Joke, been visiting one for 3 days under a false identity, winky face. Ms. Joke, 3 of them showed up today. Ms. Joke, number 14, 16, and 26. No real name mentioned, only nicknames. Zealot, Mastermind, and Thorn. Ms. Joke, the soup kitchen lets them work because their presence scares off local villains and they are hard workers. Overheard some of the regulars talking about it. Sir Naitai, nicknames? Interesting. Ms. Joke, Sir Naitai, such nicknames are something normal for heroes, villains, and vigilantes, typically to focus their fame/infamy while in some cases also hide their identity. Sir Naitai, Vox's people are supposed to not belong to any of those categories, so it's probably to hide their identity. Nedzu, it might also be to strengthen their intimidation factor. Nedzu, to refer to each other in public with normal, mundane names would detract from their otherworldly infamy. Eraserhead, I'm more concerned with number 26 being there. Eraserhead, 26 kids among the numbers? That's a big group. Nedzu, it's entirely likely that the actual number is smaller. After all, how is someone supposed to tell that there are empty numbers around? An easy way of inflating your numbers for intimidation. Nedzu, on the other hand, the labyrinth is large. Nedzu, inhabiting it with a dozen people feels redundant. You could do the same thing with an apartment or 2. Ms. Joke, can I continue? Laughing face. Ms. Joke, 14, Zealot, is 16 to 17 years old, short black hair, clearly a heavy lifter, bulky one, that some proper gains NGLXD, doesn't seem to talk too much. Ms. Joke, 16, Mastermind, is maybe 14 years old. Skinny, black hair, referred to Zealot as his brother. Ms. Joke, he was more of an accompanying person than a worker. He just sat in the corner and was doing what looked to me like an university-level math exercise, way over my head. T-Beach, smiley face, felt friendly but rather introverted, so he mostly kept to himself. Ms. Joke. The last was a girl with green, thorny hair. 16 to 17 years old. Sounded like a devout Christian. Actually came to meet me when she heard that I'm a new regular and seemed to be checking out if I'm eligible for conversion, so to say. Ms. Joke, when she saw I wasn't doing well with human interactions, apologized for making me feel uncomfortable and left, before saying that she hopes that I'd keep frequenting the kitchen. Ms. Joke seems to be something of a speaker for the group. The other two might be Christian too, but don't quote me on that. Nedzu. Oh dear, I think I recognize Thorn. Tsunaitai? Nedzu, Ibara Shiozaki. She was on my list of predicted successful applicants for this year's Hero Course entrance exam. Tsunaitai, she was on your list? What happened? Nedzu, she never showed up to the exam. Eraserhead, kidnapped? Nedzu, 2 weeks before the exam her religious community was designated a villainous organization. Nedzu, some corrupted bureaucrat managed to steal their property, including their house of worship and a cemetery, in order to pave the way for some large-scale construction project. Nedzu, when they figured out that no one was going to help them, they bombed said bureaucrat's office. He was inside at the time, but most suspect that this part was an accident. The bomb went off after the closing hours, but the guy in question sometimes pulls all-nighters and happened to do it on that very night. Nedzu, heroes and police tried to arrest the ringleaders, things went ugly, a few people died, most of the religious group in question vanished or was arrested. Ibara Shiozaki was among the vanished group. Eraserhead, and somehow joined the numbers whatever they actually are. Nedzu, it seems so. Eraserhead, she joined relatively recently, though, maybe the numbers are chronological? Nedzu, hard to say as of now. Nedzu, we have to continue this delicious investigation to find out more. Eraserhead. Ms. Joke, I'll stop showing up there for a few days, acting as if I was overwhelmed by my social anxiety, before returning winky face. Eraserhead, your acting skills are impeccable as always, it seems. Ms. Joke, I know. Now marry me finally, angry face. Eraserhead, stop doing that each time I say anything positive about you in public. Ms. Joke, Sir Naitai's position as All Might's sidekick was somewhat complicated nowadays. They had an argument a few years ago, after Toshinori's battle with All for One, over All Might's terminal inability to sit on his ass and let his broken body recover. Mirai Sasaki got the message and left, striking out for independence. He was classified as an S-rank hero following the reform of the system and, not long after that, scored a promotion, becoming one of the 20 SS-rank heroes of Japan. Mostly by his investigative work, but his status as a former sidekick of All Might helped him as well. Except, nowadays the two of them have made up. Settled their differences, with All Might admitting that Mirai had a point about the recovery, and Sir Night-Eye admitting that the way he shared his opinion back then was. In hindsight, while yelling at All Might was born from worry, the whole breakup was Sir Night-Eye's fault. He should have stayed beside All Might and continued supporting him instead of washing his hands of All Might and letting him continue the slow destruction of his body. Sir Night-Eye was emotionally and mentally exhausted from the war against All for One, and lashed out too aggressively. That one was on him. It wasn't easy, but they were working together once more. Sir Night-Eye was thus an independent hero, but one whose agency was seen by many as an external investigative agency for the Might Tower. This opened nearly all doors in the country for Sir Night-Eye. Scheduling the meeting with the head of the Longshot Hero Agency, the B-rank hero marksman, was equally easy. And it finally came to be 2 days after Ms. Joke's encounter with the trio from the numbers in the soup kitchen. He could, of course, get the meeting done earlier. It has been almost a week since Eraserhead found out that numbers had something to do with the hero agency. Marksman was, in comparison to Night-Eye and his authority, a nobody. However, Mirai Sasaki wasn't an idiot. Marksman might have been only a B-rank hero, about comparable with best of the unranked heroes of old ranking, but his track record was almost flawless. He had a good reputation for his anti-villain operations in Mizudafu. He sounded like someone who genuinely acted the heroic part of the job. In short, someone whom you treated with proper respect, regardless of the ranking. Besides, Mirai couldn't be sure that his next investigation wouldn't bring him to Mizudafu as well. After all, this was already the second time he ended up working with marksmen, although the last time was rather brief and as a part of a larger operation. The two heroes didn't really exchange any words back then. But there could be a third time as well. Sir Night Eye might have had authority, but he hated being heavy-handed about it. So instead of trying to rush things, he phoned the Longshot agency and asked for a meeting, before being extremely courteous and confirming 3 times that he isn't in a hurry and he is ready to meet at the earliest date convenient to marksmen. Which happened to be 5 days later, and probably 4 days later after what he could achieve if he was in a hurry. Then, when the day came, he arrived 20 minutes earlier. And once again, confirmed that no, he doesn't expect to be invited to Marksman's bureau ahead of time unless the hero really wants to. The hero wanted to. Mirai Sasaki didn't continue his resistance, because at this point that would be a sign of a lack of culture and respect to his host, and instead entered the marksman's office. Marksman was a relatively young hero. 27 years old, Ketsubutsu's graduate. His quirk was a bit like Snipes. He could control projectiles, making them home on designated targets. The difference was that he didn't fare well with high-speed projectiles, like bullet rounds, but instead was better suited for heavier ones, like arrows. He could also throw knives with deadly efficiency and was a dead shot with a slingshot, but he mostly focused on bows. His hero costume was a dark green jumpsuit with a hoodie and a quiver on his back. If he was to be honest, Mirai Sasaki believed that the hero in front of him had a fair chance of getting promoted sooner or later. The chances of him breaking through to S rank were extremely low, but A rank was certainly achievable. It depended on many factors, like luck, but it was also one more reason why Sir didn't rush the meeting. Connections with heroes ascending in the ranking were useful. His agency was coincidentally the one closest to the Dagoba Labyrinth. It was the seedy western Mizudafu, although close to the local police precinct, in the strip of the area where the law was still working as intended. The fact that marksmen dug in and accepted lack of publicity and high risks of death or injury and continued serving the public rather than trying to move to a greener pasture was a testament to his feeling of duty as a hero. There was another hero agency in northwestern Mizudafu, but the hero in charge of it moved out and his sidekicks transferred to other agencies. Marksman simply refused to move. "Sir Knight?" Marksman shouts cheerfully while standing up from behind his desk. "I'm honored to see you in my agency. What brings you here?" There was also the part where there was a large All Might poster on one of the walls of the office. That certainly makes her even more positive towards the other hero. He can sense a fellow fanboy, well, fanman, and that's always good. "An investigation of sorts?" Sir replies. Marksman points towards a chair on the other side of the desk, and Mirai promptly sits there. This might take a while, so making yourself comfortable is perfectly logical. "Have you ever heard of the group known as Numbers?" Marksman's cheerful face freezes instantly. It also loses some of its colors. Gossip about the Longshot agency having a run-in with the Numbers had a firm foundation in facts, no doubt about it. "I should have guessed some big shot will finally notice them." Marksman says finally, sounding bitter? Exhausted? "Listen, I'll be frank. Numbers are dangerous. I'm not going to lecture an SS rank hero on the dangers of the job, but..." He sighs and drops whatever line of thinking he was following. Sir continues to give him an empty stare throughout. "What do you want to know? When did you become aware of them?" "Sirs, this outing appears to be a worthwhile one. He is going to learn something. Something like a year ago." Marksman replies. "Few of my sidekicks notified me independently that they saw kids with numbered face masks on the streets during their patrols. A bit too often for it to be a complete coincidence or a fashion choice. Something about it bothered them, so they came to me. After I heard that several times, I decided to launch an investigation into the issue. My sidekicks started tailing some of the numbers and tracked them back to the Dagoba Labyrinth. Then things got nasty." "Nasty?" "Sirs, this is another confirmation that the numbers are based in the labyrinth." He is just noticeably surprised by the fact that Marksman didn't make anyone else aware of the numbers' existence. "I received a letter from someone signed as Vox. Marksman replies, his face clouded and the man clearly avoiding Sasaki's eyes. Sir feels like a predator that just detected a prey in the area. He asked me, in very kind words by the way, to drop the investigation. He assured me that the children I'm looking into are well cared for, and that bringing their existence into public attention would cause many unfortunate things to happen to people that didn't deserve them. Normally I'd completely disregard such a letter, but certain circumstances added gravity to Vox's words. Circumstances? Sir can see that Marksman is deeply uncomfortable with the questioning. It's not interrogation, but it gets pretty close at this point. But he keeps pushing. Marksman was clearly mulling it over for a few seconds before deciding to just say it and be done with it. The letter was lying on my desk when I returned to work after a day off. Marksman finally says, his eyes meeting Sir Nighteyes. It was left there by someone looking identical to me, identical enough to fool my sidekicks and all biological scanners installed into the building. Someone who impersonated me for a full 8 hours and made sure to spend at least 10 minutes alone with every person working in my agency. Someone who, frankly speaking, proved capable of assassinating every sidekick and civilian worker of my agency during a single day. Sir Night-Eye finds himself staring at Marksman, while his mind is trying to comprehend what he just heard. That was that explained Marksman's decision to avoid confrontation with the numbers, but yeah, that's about the face I made after I finally figured out why everyone looked at me strangely when I asked them what did I miss by not coming to work yesterday. Marksman adds, bitterly, the man scratching the side of his head. Somehow they even acted like me, good enough to fool everyone. And after seeing the security camera recordings, I get why they fell for it. So I decided to acquiesce to Vox's offer. The hero in front of Mirai feels embarrassed by that. Even more due to the fact that he has to admit that in front of the sidekick/former sidekick of his idol. Sir Night-Eye can understand that, but he can also understand Marksman's decision to walk out of this one battle. You just left the issue? Sir Night-Eye decides to ask after all. You didn't try to get support from any larger hero agency? And what was I supposed to tell them? Marksman replies before sighing painfully. Sir Night-Eye actually finds himself lost. Imagine that some small-time hero from a beleaguered district shows up at your hero agency and tells you about this small local gang composed entirely of children, while claiming that one of them has a quirk that would easily make them into at least an S-rank villain, with the only evidence for their existence being a single recording. The one that portrayed the small-time hero in question doing exactly nothing out of character for the whole shift, aside from leaving a letter. That, by the way, had no DNA or fingerprints on it, aside from my own. What would you think about this story? I'd peg the hero in question as looking for publicity or attention, in the best-case scenario not for his own gain but due to hoping to drag the attention of me to his district to at least somewhat improve local security in the process. Sir Night-Eye admits, with Marksman nodding with a gloomy expression on his face. I understand your reaction now. It was probably the best way of making sure that your sidekicks weren't endangered by an enemy clearly out of your league. Marksman clearly needed some validation. It seems to have at least slightly gotten him out of the bad mood. Because honestly, he was faced with a situation way out of his league and he managed to keep everyone involved from dying. That much had to be admitted. I didn't drop the investigation entirely, for the record. Marksman then adds. Sir Night-Eye can feel a tinge of hope. Investigating them openly felt dangerous, so I told my sidekicks to note down every sighting of the numbers to gather as much intel about them in a more passive way. Not follow any of them, not ask any questions about them, just note down where and when they saw them on the street. All while being on the lookout for potential cases of impersonation or any crimes connected to the numbers in the area, but we've found nothing on both sides. Marksman sighs. I'm ready to give you our whole database. While being genuinely happy that someone more capable is on the case, because I just want to forget that numbers exist. Sir Night-Eye, on my way back from Longshot's hero agency. Sir Night-Eye, I have news. Nedzu? Oh? Something important? Sir Night-Eye, we should increase the estimated threat level of the numbers. And ramp up security concerning this investigation. Sir Night-Eye, by a sizable degree. Eraserhead. Eraserhead, what is it now? Sir Nightai. Marksman noticed a bunch of kids that might have been living on the street, so he launched an investigation into them with the intent of involving child services once he could confirm that they were truly homeless or were otherwise abused. Sir Nightai. He suspected them of being used by some gang to do the legwork on the street. Sir Nightai. He dropped his inquiry into the subject after a letter from Vox kindly asking him to stop getting involved in things that didn't concern him. Tsukachien. What sort of letter from a potential villain makes a pro-hero drop an investigation into them? Sir Nightai. The one left on their desk by someone looking exactly like them. After said someone spent a full 8 hours pretending to be the pro-hero in question, fooling both their sidekicks and all the bioscanners present in the agency in the process, while making sure to spend at least 10 minutes face-to-face with every single one of said sidekicks, and also the civilian workers. Meaning that, as Marksman put it, they proved themselves capable of assassinating all of their employees in a single day. Tsukachien. Oh yeah, that works. Eraserhead. Are you kidding me? Sir Nightai. Unregistered Class 5 impersonation quirk. Voice, DNA, fingerprints, everything was a perfect match to Marksman. Sir Nightai. Depending on the activation factor, that we don't know a thing about, the person in question could probably walk into Nedzu's office tomorrow wearing Eraserhead's body as a disguise and stab the principal in the eye with a pencil. Sir Nightai, while probably framing Eraserhead in the process. Eraserhead. I hate being used as an example like that, but I hate the fact that it makes sense even more. Sir Nightai. And either there is some personality copying element to the quirk in question or its user is a very good actor, as the sidekicks didn't notice anything amiss in their behavior. Even Marksman himself saw nothing behaviorally incorrect in the security feed. Sir Nightai. Walking posture, sitting posture, gestures while talking, the way they ate food, everything was perfectly copied. The only incorrectness reported by the sidekicks was the not Marksman generally avoiding important subjects to avoid accidentally tripping over lacking knowledge that the real Marksman would have. Sir Nightai. So, chit-chat and publicly available knowledge only. Sir Nightai. Despite that weakness, it's still one of the most powerful and dangerous impersonation quirks I've ever heard of. This is a gigantic security problem and I can't stress that enough. Ms. Joke. A question, winky face. Do you think that they are a part of numbers, or do they have some sort of backer that intervened to scare Marksman off? Sir Nightai. I don't want to even imagine an organization having unrestricted access to the quirk healer and an impersonator of this magnitude. That's a good food. Nedzu. With a quirk like what Vox has, it's entirely possible that for him it's much easier to find, or even cultivate, depending on what he can actually do, rare and powerful quirks. Nedzu. Thus far we have no indication of him having contact with any organizations whatsoever. Nedzu. He seems to be interested primarily in being left alone by the world, and I fail to imagine villainous organizations not having demands. Eraserhead. Well, I certainly don't want those kids to be villains. Eraserhead. Is that all you got from Marksman? Sir Nightai. No. Sir Nightai. He realized that he was outmatched and that he had no evidence to persuade a larger hero agency to take him seriously, so he stood down from active investigation and focused on passive information gathering. Sir Nightai gave me his entire database, while looking genuinely relieved that it was off his hands now. Sir Nightai. Can't say I blame him. Eraserhead. Fair, I would be terrified if someone pulled this on me too. Ms. Joke. Sir Nightai. I'm still looking through the data. In the meantime, Nedzu, can you get that man some support? Sir Nightai. He is doing a great job despite being badly outgunned in his neighborhood, and even when numbers pulled this on him, he kept gathering intel in hopes of delivering it to any larger agency that would come asking, and thus he could at least hope that they would believe him. Sir Nightai. That deserves some recognition. Nedzu. I'd like to, but it's not easy. Not nowadays. Sir Nightai. Didn't you drop your money left and right for years? Nedzu. That was before the insurrections. Nedzu. Guess I'll elaborate now to get it over with. Nedzu. The government wasn't fully aware of just how divided hero society was, in big part thanks to the HPSC not wanting them to know beforehand. Nedzu. Then the insurrections came and the Prime Minister's office discovered that the pro-heroes, the foundation of the society as a whole, were split between a handful of secret societies/cabals/political parties. Nedzu, first the MLA-aligned heroes launched a quirk supremacist coup, then the HPSC that was supposed to squash it was embroiled in an effective civil war against an internal revolt of paragons led by Invincible, whose very existence implied that the HPSC plotted a coup of its own. Nedzu, then the government asked the heroes, and while my faction and a lot of independents answered, Miruko and Gang Orca turned out to be the heads of the table of rejects, a quasi-secret. I knew, a lot of heroes knew, the government didn't, and that's the problem here. Mutual support society for heteromorphic and villainous quirked heroes. Nedzu and the government discovered it when the heroes in question started taking their sweet time delaying their response to the MLA coup to let Geeton pummel the HPSC as much as possible, and it's a journalist's secret that the MLA was courting the table of rejects, and the delay makes the government suspect that Miruko and Gang Orca considered saying yes. Nedzu, in my opinion they didn't, they just wanted the commission to bleed before intervening, for the record. Nedzu, I might have been crucial in suppressing the insurrections, but no one up there trusts me fully, just as they wouldn't trust any person that isn't an elected politician and has that much influence in politics and beyond it, and I know for certain that there is an entire task force of the Public Security Intelligence Agency dedicated to tracking my activity, just as there is another one covering the table leadership, because the Gov realized that we can both launch a coup with a serious chance of success at our leisure. Nedzu, how do you all think they'll react to me suddenly drowning local hero agencies with money? Eraserhead, this is incredibly stupid. Eraserhead, but familiar. Eraserhead, Underground Hero Network has a third PSIA task force on it, and we all know it. Ms. Joke, Sernaitai, so they would worry that you're securing UA's surroundings, Idadi Muzutafu, as part of preparing a coup or just strengthening your position in relation to the government. Nedzu, yes. Sernaitai, they would also, in the worst-case scenario, discover the numbers and do who knows what. That's a bit food. Sernaitai, you're not worried about the HeroNet getting compromised? Nedzu, no, that would require getting the World Heroes Association involved, and I have friendly faces there, so I'd know. Nedzu, but I prefer to avoid worrying the government anymore. It's jumpy enough and for honestly valid reasons. Nedzu, I'll try to get some of my friendly faces in the business circle to support Marksman with donations and maybe fund the re-establishment of Rapier's hero agency to give him some friendly faces west of Hosa River, but it'll take a while and it'll have to be done in a more natural-looking way to not make it look as if I'm supporting them. Nedzu, it will also be less than Marksman most likely deserves. Nedzu, anything more to add, Sernaitai? Have you found anything in the database yet? Sernaitai, a few things. Sernaitai, Marksman did a good job with it. Sernaitai, 1. I have a map of confirmed sightings throughout Muzutafu. Sernaitai, this gives us a few locations that appear to be hotspots for numbers activity. Sernaitai, aside from confirmation that the labyrinth is their base, that's not a lot of new intel. We knew about the soup kitchen, a handful more are just part-time jobs. The only odd thing is the old fishing wharf north of Labyrinth. Sernaitai, 2. A small database of numbers and their rough physical descriptions. Nothing there seems to be enough to run them through a police database, but it's something to start our own intel gathering with. Sernaitai, the highest recorded number to date is 39. Marksman confirms that sightings of the single digits are almost unheard of. They are practically urban legends of their own at this point. Sernaitai, Marksman thinks that they exist, but they almost never leave the Dagoba Labyrinth. Sernaitai, he also noted down a gossip that one of the numbers is an impersonator, apparently number 12, but he had no evidence to support it. Sernaitai, 3. The big thing, the numbers apparently have some sort of contact with the Abegawa Tenchu Kai, a Yakuza clan whose territory is adjacent to the Dagoba Labyrinth. Eraserhead? Oh? Eraserhead, doesn't that count as having contacts with villains? Sernaitai, they are more of a gray zone, yet to receive an official villain designation. Sernaitai, one of Marksman's sidekicks, took a picture of number 10 talking with Rojiya Yananaga, head of the ATK, in front of some warehouse. Sernaitai, messy indigo hair. Nickname, Hijack. Marksman notes that he suspects Hijack of being Vox's representative of some sort or perhaps his second in command. Quirk, unknown. Might be quirkless or have a mental quirk. Seems to be carrying a taser for self-defense. Sir Naitai, I believe that the Abegawa Tenchu Kai will be our next stop. Nedzu, you think they'll talk with us? Sir Naitai, I can at least try. Sir Naitai, Tsukachi, what's your opinion on their clan? Tsukachi-en, they are less of a pain in the ass than most of the villains in the area, I give them that much. Tsukachi-en moved in Mizudafu a few years ago, from Tokyo, after some altercation with local vigilantes. Tsukachi-en stick to the old Yakuza ways, they run a few gambling houses and brothels in western Mizudafu, run protection rackets typically targeted at larger companies while steering free from small local businesses, run some loan sharking business too. Tsukachi-en indulged in some not-quite vigilantism by beating up some random local villains intruding onto their territory for an improvement in publicity and so that the police and heroes consider them less of a priority target. Tsukachi-en, I hate to admit it but they've carved out a turf in western Mizudafu and are basically running it as a combination between police and local government. Tsukachi-en, for as long as you pay a moderate tax to them, they'll keep villains off your back, even solve local arguments. Tsukachi-en, one time some woman had a massive marital argument with her husband, who was physically abusive, but she was the one earning money for their protection tax, so a few Yakuza thugs showed up and promptly sent said husband to a hospital with several broken ribs and a gentle suggestion to move out and not cause issues on their turf. Tsukachi-en, 2 cases where villains damaged the property of some local businesses that paid their protection taxes ended with the ATK financing the rebuild. So their protection tax counts as property insurance for as long as the damage was caused by villains that they were supposed to protect them from. Sir Naitai, someone got very enterprising in the absence of government influence over the area. Tsukachi-en, we're trying not to touch them, because their move to Mizudafu changed them from medium-sized fishes in a big pond to apex predators in a small pond. Most of their execs should be classified as A-rankers, 1 or 2 with potential to be S-rankers. They would all walk through Marksman and his sidekicks without noticing they were fighting someone. Tsukachi-en, besides, they are popular among the locals and no one feels like knocking them out right now and risking another bloody turf war, so the police is currently focused on slowly gathering evidence for their criminal activities and avoiding confrontation. Sir Naitai, do you think they'll talk with us? Tsukachi-en, that depends on too many factors for me to predict it. Tsukachi-en, they don't like the police, obviously, but if, say, All Might's sidekick shows up on their doorstep, they might choose the avoid confrontation route and at least tell us something. Tsukachi-en, I can't speculate anything more without knowing what sort of deal they made with the numbers though. Nedzu, it's likely to betray Sir Naitai's involvement into their case to the numbers. Nedzu, are we ready for that? Sir Naitai, I don't think we have an awful lot of choice on that field. Besides, if Vox is as cautious as we suspect him to be, it's likely that he knows I visited Marksman and already suspects that it was about him. Nedzu, I see. Nedzu, anything else to report? Eraserhead had a patrol close to the labyrinth last evening. I can confirm that numbers are present in the area. Eraserhead, I believe I saw the soup kitchen delegation returning to the labyrinth, so it's most likely their headquarters as suspected. Nedzu, good. Nedzu, I in the meantime managed to find something truly delightful. Sir Naitai? Oh? Nedzu, I'm at this point 90% certain that the fire that killed Midoriya Izuku and his mother was staged by the Midoriyas. They didn't die in it, yes. But it wasn't a kidnapping or a struggle. They wanted to disappear and used the fire to cover all evidence and make people believe that they died. Nedzu, no idea what happened to them afterwards. The cover-up has been good. Nedzu, disappearing without a trace and living elsewhere under a different name and identity feels like a logical, if slightly extreme, response to your son developing the sort of quirk that the quirk healer has. Nedzu, what's more, I have confirmed without a shred of doubt that Midoriya Inko is the former supervillain known as Mischief. Sir Naitai, you're kidding? Eraserhead, what's his father's quirk? Nedzu, fire breath, Midoriya Izuku's quirk is either a random mutation or his parents' quirk registry was faked to a smaller or greater degree. Eraserhead, does that count as a confirmation of identity for Vox? Nedzu, that's still not a 100% match, but the fact that pursuing Vox's identity led us to a disappeared relative of an S-rank villain is telling, to say the least. Eraserhead, I see, please continue. Nedzu, Midoriya Inko apparently suffered some spinal injury, which might explain mischief suddenly vanishing from the scene. Nedzu, and clearly, deciding to focus on her family. Nedzu, I'm still investigating Midoriya Hisashi, her husband, but I'm almost 100% certain that his entire identity is fake. Nedzu, in fact I'm yet to be convinced that he actually existed. Inko might have been a single mother for reasons unknown the whole time. Eraserhead, this is just getting better and better with every new discovery, isn't it? Nedzu, I assure you Eraserhead, that I absolutely love every second of it. Eraserhead, of course you do. Ms. Joke, Yevi really living up to the mad rat god stereotype aren't you? Nedzu, how nice of you to say that. Sir Naitai, also that just leaves us with the Abegawa Tenchu Kai. Eraserhead, when do we go visit them? Sir Naitai, we? Eraserhead, I have a reputation on the street. Making them known I'm on the case might give them an additional incentive to calm down. Sir Naitai, that's reasonable. Tsukachi? Tsukachian, I'll phone them and suggest a meeting. Preferably tomorrow. Me, Eraserhead and Sir Naitai. Eraserhead, great. The clan headquarters is a large, 3-story building in a seedier district. There are some clan members hanging around it, but someone already told them that the guests were invited and they let them in without causing any trouble. By the time the visitors reach the room used by the Abegawa Tenchu Kai's executives for official meetings, they are painfully aware of one thing. The Yakuza clan they are visiting is more dangerous than they thought. Oh, weapons and so on were well hidden, but they noticed a surprising amount of support items. Please, sit down. Rojiya Yananaga, known under the street name of Manhole, it wasn't the villain name, the clan didn't respect those, although the difference was academic, announces. He's a well-built man with a sizable strength and endurance-enhancing quirk, who seemed to have an odd habit of collecting manhole covers that he also used as a curious combination between melee weapon, a shield and a throwable weapon. The best picture of the way Abegawa Tenchu Kai conducted its business was the fact that Rojiya always had one of his underlings stand guard until the police arrived after stealing a manhole, just to make sure that no one fell down the hole by accident. Nuisance to the locals rather than a menace, for as long as you made sure to not appear rude to him. The remaining executives are Tetsu, who had some armor quirk, Haruhisa, elderly man with a lot of scars and a transformation-based strength quirk, and, finally, Soji, a man with a helmet, hammer, and a thunder quirk. As far as Sir is aware after reading the data the police had on them, they're rather capable. Just as Tsukachi said, ranks, if they were officially designated as villains. It would be a fairly close battle if the meeting ended in one, especially with the regular Yakuza members on standby, ready to barge in. So, what brings the long arm of the law to our establishment? Rojiya adds when they are all seated. Executives on one edge of the table, the visitors on the opposite one. The atmosphere isn't particularly tense. Both heroes and the policeman refuse the alcohol, claiming that they are working. Tetsu looks especially saddened by the disrespect shown to his favorite drink. He treated it very seriously. Numbers. Detective Tsukachi replies. Sir sighs, seeing the familiar reaction. It's like marksman times 4. Faces freeze for a moment, and then the calmness, and some colors, is gone from them. I figured out that someone would eventually start digging into them. Rojiya says finally. He sounds dry. Tired maybe? I'm not going to help you catch any of them. But I can tell you a few things. Consider this a gesture of my clan's goodwill. What do you want to know? Soji looks at him with a sudden spike of worry on his face. Rojiya dismisses him with a shake of his head. You're ready to talk with the police about them? Sir Night-Eye says, trying not to sound confrontational, or as if he suspected Yananaga of dishonesty. The people in front of him treated such things seriously. I've spent a significant part of my childhood on the street. Yananaga replies calmly. I can empathize with them to a degree. For now they are doing pretty well, but eventually, as they keep growing older, their little Peter Panotopia is inevitably going to face completely new hurdles and attract the attention of groups that aren't going to be deterred by their urban legend reputation. For reasons I'm planning to share with you later on in this talk, I genuinely believe that regardless of their own will, they should be taken off the street as soon as possible. For their own good. And you get nothing out of it? Sir Knight asks, his eyes squinting on the man. I get peace. Manhole replies calmly. The ability to continue doing my business in peace without having to worry about groups beyond my ability coming in to try to dig intel on the numbers. Starting from, it seems, the sidekick of the symbol of peace. That's his game, Sir Knight realizes. At least partially it was all done to maintain their Yakuza with rules of honor and common human decency, not villain's image, all while appearing that way to people close to All Might himself. After all, not all villains were immediately arrested, some were better kept in place for as long as they didn't go too far, especially in situations such as the current one, where dismantling ATK would mean starting a turf war between several much nastier villain crews. It wasn't a bad idea. Yananaga didn't expect protection, but he hoped for the occasional minor favor exchange and the off-the-script confirmation that the UA wasn't going to try to uproot his clan. After all, Eraserhead was also there, and everyone in Mizudafu knew about his connection to the UA. What's your business with the numbers? Detective asks, clearly reading the lengthy silence as a bit too lengthy. That's the most important question to ask right now. You could say that we are their PR department. Rogiya replies. Sir is honestly surprised by that statement. We helped spread the gossip about the numbers and how dangerous they are. We also gently explained to newcomers from outside of Mizudafu that the Dagoba Labyrinth is a bad place to be in. In a way, we are acting as if it's part of our turf. We also inform Vox about developments among the local villains that could somehow affect the numbers. They talked earlier with Tsukachi about the ways in which he would discreetly inform them that they heard a lie. He made none of them. In exchange for? The detective asks. You aren't doing this for free. Actually, technically we do. Rogiya replies with a faint smile. Eraserhead stares at him strangely. We aren't getting paid for it. Neither in money, nor in services or goods. Instead, we are the only group in Shizuoka that can buy things from them. Their representative, Hijack, arrives once a month with a list of goods and the pricing. We pick what we want, give him the money, and a few days later everything arrives at one of our warehouses. Sir is growing increasingly surprised with the way the talk goes. Numbers are oddly competent, if not hyper-competent, but what exactly can they be selling? Support items, perhaps. Yeah, that makes sense. What are they selling? Sir decides to ask in the end. There might be more than just the support items. Lots of things. Rogiya replies. Support items, very high-quality ones and for a very modest price. We also had them replace all our computers and phones and upgrade their security a few months ago. I had several hackers try to hack them as a test and they all sung praises for whoever set them up. Once again, the price was low when compared to what you get on the market. He seems to be considering whether to say something or not for a few seconds, before adding further words. Finally, drugs. But those come with restrictions. Oh dear, as Nedzu would say. Drugs? Tsukachi asks immediately. The mood in the room tenses. Strange ones, and before you ask, we're forbidden from selling or giving them to others. Yananaga replies. Besides, we don't traffic drugs per policy. It's all for our own use. And for as far as we know, none of them are addictive. Medical drugs, in short, although they clearly weren't produced in any legal pharmaceutical company. Hijack mentioned that they stole the recipes from someone, and if said someone notices them being used in Mizudafu, things will get ugly. Considering how dangerous the numbers appear to be, we've figured out that keeping those drugs hidden is a good idea. Yananaga's eyes narrow. I hope you won't do anything stupid about it, yes? Naturally. Sir Knight nods. This entire investigation is strictly confidential. Could you tell us more about those drugs? They're called Overtrigger, Boost, and Restore. Yananaga replies. All names in English, oddly enough. Sir dislikes the first name especially. Trigger is depressingly common these days, especially among various rioters and lowlifes. Nobody knows for certain who is supplying them, but Sir Night Eye is almost certain that the Quirkless Liberation Front is involved. Overtrigger is basically Trigger, but the effects are less intense. Rogiya continues. In exchange, it's not addictive and doesn't make you stupid or aggressive. Boost is a powerful physical stimulant, makes you stronger and faster for a while without amplifying your quirk. Instead, the strength of the strengthening depends on how powerful your quirk is. Restore, in the meantime, is basically a strong energy drink, but for quirks. Something to stave off quirk exhaustion for a while. As much as we looked into, we didn't find anyone else out there offering them. Sir stares at the Yakuza executive in silence. He isn't the only one. Eraserhead and Tsukachi are shocked as well. Weaker, how much? Trigger without the negative side effects. A drug to cure quirk exhaustion? Neither of them ever heard of something like that. They didn't even know that was possible to make. The existence of those drugs and the support items trade explained why the Abegawa Tenchukai recently developed ambitions and began to expand. All probably according to Vox's plan, since this means that their living smokescreen is more intimidating and more likely to divert problems away from the Dagoba labyrinth. Is there a chance that you'll hand us some samples? Tsukachi asks. Rogiya shakes his head. Oh, I promise to not share them with any outsider. The clan head replies promptly. On the honor of our clan. I'm not going to budge on that. As far as I'm aware, you have a lie-detecting quirk. It should confirm that those drugs exist, but I'm not going to give you anything. The H word is thrown around. No sense trying to push. The people in front of them aren't, technically, villains, so they can't just try to attack them to get their answers. That would be assault. And they don't have the evidence to justify it. Contrary to the popular picture of pro-heroes, unless there was a crime in progress, you needed a warrant to engage people in combat. Especially on their own property, and especially in their own home. Fine. The detective knew that there was no point continuing that line. They would only offend their hosts, and that would end up badly. Anything else they give you? Healing. Rogiya promptly replies. They have someone with a healing quirk. Probably a powerful one. When one of us is badly wounded, I phone a certain number. Then we deliver the wounded member before the labyrinth and leave them there. I get a call back 2 or 3 days later, and then we pick up our man or woman where we left them, their wounds healed. They are apparently kept unconscious during the whole time, so they don't know anything about the labyrinth's insides. He shrugs. Once again, the price is very modest. And they don't ask questions. What's the worst injury that was healed that way? This time it's Sir that asks. Considering All Might's injuries, he is personally interested whenever the words powerful healing quirk are involved. That would be Soji. Rogiya answers. He was jumped by several villains. Lost an arm, lots of blood, and was stabbed with a knife several times. Returned 3 days later, looking as if nothing happened to him. Sir, one more time. This conversation is rather plentiful when it comes to moments like these. Stares at the Yakuza. This is at least Recovery Girl's level. Most likely more, considering the arm part. She could reattach limbs if she acted fast enough and the slice was clean, but unless the numbers somehow recovered Soji's arm. We were in a hurry that time, so they picked him up on their own. Rogiya seems to be quite enjoying the shock on the heroes' faces. In his own twisted way. Told us to leave the building, leaving Soji and the phone behind us. We returned 5 minutes later and we only found the phone. Considering that and how their regular deliveries work, I'm almost certain that they have someone with a warp quirk as well. Don't quote me on that, though. Sir is as shocked as he is worried. There is a nasty frown on his face. Part of him suspects that this is some gargantuan joke and he is falling for it. The numbers are slowly approaching a ridiculous level of ability. They are children, damn it. Skillful but, well, unless there is someone hiding behind them. That would explain a lot. Is someone using the numbers to test new drugs and support items? But there were easier ways of achieving that. The presence of a warp quirk would also explain how they managed to disappear to people attacking numbers out there on the spot. Numbers probably carry some sort of panic button, unsurprising, considering the amount of support items they have access to. Someone is attacked, they press the button and soon the reinforcements arrive through a warp gate. But it required a precise long-range warp quirk to achieve. Anything you can tell us about their members? Tsukachi moves the subject to a slightly saner field. I didn't see a lot of them, Rogiya replies. Besides Hijack. I met Vox at the beginning. After Carnage vanished and the area around the labyrinth opened up, I knew that the numbers were involved. And that they don't take attacks on them nicely. So I went alone to the labyrinth and waited on the edge of it. 10 minutes later Vox emerged and asked me what I wanted. So I told him that I'm from the Yakuza, that I'm inheriting the local streets from Carnage and that I know that he took him down. So I came to discuss how to be a good neighbor. He looked at me for like half a minute before he offered the terms. And I agreed. Was he alone during the negotiations? Sirs, this sounds strange for someone as paranoid as Vox apparently is. Also, it's hard to say if the word negotiations is a correct one, since Rogiya just agreed to the stated terms. No, Yakuza replies. He had Hijack with him. Plus a creepy-looking kid with light blue hair and a realistic-looking human hand instead of a face mask. It had a number 8 tattooed on it, but I didn't hear his name. There was also a girl with a number 2 on her mask, looking rather scrawny and staying quiet in the background, but, I'll be honest, her glare was actually intimidating. I sharpened my instincts on the streets for most of my life, and they were rather clear that they wanted me to not fight that girl. One last question. This time it's Eraserhead. Do you have any idea what the numbers actually are? He doesn't specify what he means by what they are, but Rogiya figures out the meaning well enough. I know the answer. Yananaga replies, surprising them all. In fact, it's the reason I mentioned earlier. The one for me wanting them off the street. I got curious once and asked Hijack about it. He said that they are all children and teenagers that became victims of the war between the villains and heroes and decided that they don't want anything to do with either side. And since they can't hope to be truly left alone on their own, they banded together to live in peace. He sighs. They are apparently hiding, because if either side learns of them, it will attempt to use them for their war again. That's an extreme over-exaggeration. Sir immediately replies. He is angry. Is that how Vox is keeping the other numbers in line? With threats like this? They are runaway kids who were told that they are going to be used by the adults if they are caught. This is child abuse. He decides to ignore the part where Nedzu seems to salivate at the thought of getting Vox in his paws. He is going to have to do something about it, although if Vox is really using fear to intimidate the other kids, then Eraserhead and Tsukachi seem to be agreeing with him. Oh no. Rogiya shakes his head with sadness on his face. They will most certainly be used if they are caught, by either heroes or villains. With one justification or another. You see, Hijack told me what are the basic requirements to be recruited into the numbers. First one is being underage. Second is being on the run from villains or heroes. And the third one, he sighs, is being a bearer of a class 4 or 5 quirk. Nedzu, considering the rising danger and importance level of the investigation, I have decided to involve further pro-heroes from the area, namely, from UA. Nedzu, namely, Midnight, Present Mike, I thought that Eraserhead would like that addition, and Vlad King. Vlad King. Oh, so I guess that Eraserhead won't like my addition, then. Midnight, Vlad King. You're not persuasive at all, Nimuri. Present Mike. Just stop taking your dogs versus cats debate so seriously XD. Vlad King, and Present Mike. So, from what I gathered, we're looking into a group of little listeners from Yuzudafu that are apparently scaring villains straight. Nedzu, yes. Ms. Joke, villains, heroes, and vigilantes. Mike V. Present, Emmy. Midnight, Joke. Ms. Joke, yay, my siblings-in-law are here, laughing face. Midnight, still trying it? Ms. Joke, eventually I will succeed 3. Vlad King, what's the present status of the investigation? Nedzu, Eraserhead is visiting Abegawa Tenchu Kai, a local Yakuza clan, together with Sir Night Eye and Detective Tsukachi Naomesa from local police. Nedzu, I'm expecting interesting news. Present Mike, whoa, hold your horses, boss. Present Mike, Sir Night Eye is in on this investigation? Present Mike, isn't that an overreaction? Nedzu, consider this the UA equivalent of a state secret, but the leader of those kids has a Class 6 quirk that allows them to permanently edit functionalities of other quirks, to unknown degree. Present Mike, okay, that's not an overreaction. Vlad King, tell me you're joking. Nedzu, Vlad King, that's an option? Nedzu, it was apparently an urban legend on the street, one that no one serious believed in, myself included, at least until Eraserhead had an encounter with him. Vlad King, what exactly can he do? Nedzu, thus far he restored Eraserhead's quirk after he was shot by, and that's another classified thing, what we believe to be a prototype quirk-destroying bullet. We also know he permanently altered the quirk of one of the Class 1A students, essentially adding an on-off switch to her invisibility quirk. Present Mike, Eraserhead was hit by what? Midnight, and he didn't tell us. Midnight, I'm going to kill him. In a distinctly unsexy way. Nedzu, he was told to keep it under wraps. But then he was visited by someone claiming to be the quirk healer, who restored his lost quirk. We've managed to track him back to the numbers and, well, they have a reputation. Eraserhead, and they are about to get 10 times more of it. Present, Shota, why didn't you tell me what happened? Eraserhead, to avoid getting shouted at by you, I wanted some peace and quiet. Hisashi. Midnight, there's going to be a serious talk between us about keeping secrets from each other. Ms. Joke. Eraserhead. Ms. Joke, Kiki. Eraserhead, not on the public chat for the investigation. Present Mike? Midnight? Eraserhead, I'm on my way back from the Yakuza. Tsukachi is driving. Sir Night Eye seems to be going through the trauma in the front passenger seat but should be able to answer all your questions in a moment. He is probably better with summaries either way. Eraserhead, also, Nedzu, will have to expand more. We will need Hound Dog, Power Loader, Recovery Girl, at least some top heroes and maybe some of the Eastern Muzudafu heroes at least for the legwork, without access to really confidential info, because the situation just went pear-shaped. Nedzu, oh dear. Nedzu, what happened? Eraserhead at Sir Night Eye, right? Sir Night Eye, 1. Numbers have a deal with the Yakuza. Yakuzas keep the heat off them and help them hide from authorities and other villains, and in exchange numbers allows them to buy things from them. Nedzu, things? Sir Night Eye, super high quality and affordably priced, support items. Information. Cyber services, like electronic security. And last but not least, drugs. Apparently one-of-a-kind drugs. Ms. Joke, drugs? Nanny the fuck? Sir Night Eye, 1A. Over trigger, weakened version of a trigger that doesn't impair cognitive functions, doesn't make you aggressive and isn't addictive. 1B, boost, physical stimulant apparently extremely powerful, makes you stronger and faster for a while, proportionally to the strength of your quirk. 1C, restore, Clan had described it as an energy drink for quirks, something to push the quirk exhaustion away for the time being. Ms. Joke, what? Ms. Joke, what the actual fuck? Ms. Joke, I've been pursuing drug-related crimes for years and I've never heard of such drugs. Eraserhead, I know, damn it. Eraserhead, Tsukachi confirmed they were being honest about the way these drugs work and their existence. There is a possibility that someone fooled them with a quirk, but not that big. Eraserhead, Yakuza swore to not give any of that to an outsider, only their executives are allowed to use them. Apparently Numbers stole the recipe from someone, and if said someone finds out, things will get ugly. Eraserhead, so we only have their word for it. Sir Night Eye, we can technically get a warrant to storm the Yakuza headquarters, but we'll anger them. They probably hid the drugs already and we'll further alert the Numbers that we are onto them. Sir Night Eye at Nedzu considers sending Edgeshot to look for the samples and steal some of them. He can do it without anyone noticing. Nedzu, I'll do it once we're done with this talk. If those drugs exist, we need to know. Nedzu, what next? Sir Night Eye, 2. We've got the name for the shapeshifter. Number 12, nickname Carmilla. It took us some drilling, but the Yakuza heard some of the Numbers talk with each other and mentioned someone called Carmilla, spooking marksman off. Sir Night Eye, no facial description or anything else, though, but I think that I have an idea for the way their quirk works. Vlad King, let me guess, Carmilla? Sir Night Eye, yes. Eraserhead? Vlad King. Carmilla was a vampire from an old book. There is a high possibility that she requires an intake of blood to shapeshift into someone. Sir Nightai, my thoughts exactly. Sir Nightai, I'll phone Marksman later to ask if he knows if someone could get a hand on his blood. Was he assaulted by someone who drank his blood? Is he a blood donor, etc.? Nedzu, another great idea. Yes. Present Mike. Okay, I expected chaos, but it seems to be going oddly smoothly. Midnight. Mike, no, that's inviting Murphy and his laws. Eraserhead. Correct, but the damage was already done, we're just announcing it. Eraserhead. Wait until point 3, that's when everyone collectively loses their shit. Sir Nightai, that barely covers it, Eraserhead. Present. Sir Nightai. The Yakuza asked the numbers representative what exactly they are. Said representative, Hijack, number 10, replied that they are children and teenagers that fell victim to the wars between villains and heroes and decided that they are tired of both sides. And banded together to live in peace away from them both. Sir Nightai, because if someone finds them, they'll be used again. Present. Okay, that's fucking sick. Present Mike, is this how Vox is keeping them all in line? Present Mike, listen to what I'm saying or the scary people will come and kidnap you? Ms. Joke, sounds so, but it doesn't feel like a reason for a collective losing of shit, it's more of a classic cult behavior? Eraserhead, not point 3, the real point 3 is that Vox is fucking right about it. Ms. Joke, WTF? Sir Nightai, 3. The basic requirement to get recruited into the numbers is, besides being underage, being on the run from either heroes or villains. And having at least A class for quirk. Ms. Joke. Nedzu, oh dear. Nedzu, oh dear. Sir Nightai, if Hijack wasn't bullshitting the ATK, we have about 39 holders of some of the strongest quirks in Japan living in a scrapyard at the edge of Mizudafu. Sir Nightai, including a potential precise long-range warp quirk and a healing quirk that apparently restored a lost arm of one of the Yakuzas. Sir Nightai, under the tutelage of an aspiring quirk analyst who can alter quirks and started writing notebooks on how to use quirks for hero work more successfully right after learning how to write. His first ones were apparently written in crayons. Present. Present Mike, this is a big one. Sir Nightai, that is a nice way of saying this is a nightmare. But yes. Sir Nightai, if any major villain organization manages to find them and kidnaps them en masse or recruits them, disaster is a weak word. Sir Nightai, worst of all, any attempt to recruit them for the UA will just prove to them that they are going to be exploited again, but by our side, and will make them even more against us. Sir Nightai, also, someone go to Nedzu's office and wake the rodent out from his sensory overload coma, please. Nedzu, I'm alright please and thank you. Nedzu, just slightly overwhelmed. Nedzu, those are pretty much 2 full pre-trained classes for the hero course, and we all know that the majority of hero students in the country have class 3 quirks, so those are way above average. Nedzu, majority of future top heroes are probably living in that scrapyard. And the majority of the future supervillains if we play it wrong. Sir Nightai, alright, we can as well have that talk right now. Sir Nightai, they are not future top heroes. They are not future hero students. There are many lines of work that have nothing to do with being pro-heroes, and if they want to avoid fighting people to the death, that's their decision to make. Sir Nightai, don't prove Vox right, Nedzu. Sir Nightai, this isn't a get everyone into the hero course investigation. If anything, we should focus on getting them a better quality of life. Scrapyards can't be a safe place for children. So something like a general course recruitment with a dorm system so they aren't separated, and we can be sure that no villain organization can raid them. Sir Nightai, and them agreeing to that is an extremely optimistic assumption. Sir Nightai, at this point I'm willing to agree to just let them live there if they agree to regular checkups, health and welfare, just to keep them from being pushed into villainy by us. Hopefully to build up their trust until they decide to cooperate fully and move to a safer place. Sir Nightai, you got the message? Nedzu? Yes, I'm sorry, I got a bit too enthusiastic. Nedzu, I'm aware that my emotional difference from humans does make me somewhat unpalatable on some occasions. Nedzu, I expect you to rein me in when needed at Sir Night-Eye. Vlad King. Someone who can actually restrain Nedzu in a moment like this? Vlad King. Not bad, Sir Knight. Not bad. Nedzu, ouch. Nedzu, but you're not wrong. Sir Night-Eye, I will indeed act to rein you in if needed. Nedzu, we should focus on identifying the numbers for now and figuring out how to exactly approach them. Because I don't think that they are going to believe any adult, especially a hero. Sir Night-Eye, forceful solutions are out of the picture for now. Nedzu, obviously. Nedzu, we can't even reasonably hope to assault the Dagoba Labyrinth, because considering the number of the defenders and the strength of their quirks, this will be a small war. Nedzu, if even a single of these children dies in the struggle, and they might fight to the end considering their ideology, plus we don't even know their quirks safe for Vine, Vox and Carmilla, and for the latter two we only have rough understanding of, the results will be disastrous. Nedzu, on every level imaginable. Once upon a time, the Dagoba Labyrinth was known to the inhabitants of Mizudafu as the Dagoba Municipal Beach Park. It fell into a rather extreme lack of maintenance for close to 2 decades, slowly overflowing with, mostly, metal junk. Soon enough close to 2 kilometers of the beach were de facto a junkyard of abandoned metal parts. Entire cars, fridges and so on were just dropped there, either by sea or by human hands. That was only the beginning. Dagoba became a frequent dumping place for electronic waste. Add a few villain attacks in the area 75 years ago, and suddenly the dump began to grow inland, devouring now abandoned or ruined houses near it. Frankly speaking, the local government gave up on the entire area, like it did on so many others. It lacked the funds to do anything meaningful with the junk. The last blow was the rampage of an SS-rank villain by the name of Reassembler during the insurrections. In all honesty, Reassembler was more mentally ill than actively malicious. He saw himself as an artist who enjoyed redesigning areas, who wanted to reshape the world to materialize his artistic visions. He was one of the most powerful members of the Meta Liberation Army. His quirk allowed him to reassemble the man-made materials around him and was powerful. Very powerful. Horrifyingly powerful, in fact. Geaton needed to make sure that all might was occupied during the coup. His answer was unleashing Reassembler upon Mizudafu, timing the coup while the symbol of peace was visiting the school. Reassembler had a vision of a grand labyrinth of metal, glass, and circuits. When he heard of the size of the Dagoba dumping ground and how it began to devour the local, now abandoned, houses, he just had to take advantage of it. Geaton really knew how to incite him. He also devoured some passing ships for materials to expand his masterpiece. He was taken down by All Might following a brief but rather intense battle and was now incarcerated. But his legacy remained. Namely, the Dagoba Labyrinth. Several square miles of a literal labyrinth of twisted metal, with walls about 3 meters high. Starting at the edge of the beach and regularly flooded, and going at least 2 kilometers inland. Extremely easy to get lost in, with several open areas on the inside. The people apparently continued to dump metal parts, just further to the west and east from what was now the labyrinth. The fact that the local government let it stay like that was, frankly, sad. Worst of all, Eraserhead was now forced to see this damnable thing every other day, because his new patrol route was right next to it. Which was something that he, technically, agreed to. Sometimes Aizawa Shoto was pretty stupid. And this was an example of such a moment. Numbers were there. Well, of course they were there. They kept their distance, but he was almost constantly observed. There was at least a single teenager with a numbered face mask, of numerous designs, watching his movements. Even when he didn't see the labyrinth itself, it was pretty obvious that the nearby streets were Numbers turf. No matter what the Yakuza could say about it. And then, when Eraserhead thinks that things can't get any worse, they get worse. He turns at the corner of the street only to see 3 figures intensely debating something in a circle. They are certainly no simple civilians. One has a black jumpsuit and what looks like some sort of light biker helmet, with some rather improvised face cover. Another has a yellow hoodie with some thunder marks and a face mask, not numbered at all. He has a good eyesight. The third one is wearing an All Might hoodie, but it's almost certainly not Crawler. Vigilantes. really rookie vigilantes. Without access to the Alliance resources when it comes to disguises and so on. Worst of all, familiar vigilantes. Or, well, all but the All Might one, he doesn't recognize that one. It's really not a problem for someone like Eraserhead to sneak upon them and instantly capture them all with his scarf. They all yell in shock. Detention, all of you. Eraserhead announces. Kaminari, Jairu, and who are you? He doesn't recognize the third person, she only squeals a bit in an answer. Also, I don't know where exactly you are, Hagakure, but if you try to escape I'm using my quirk on you. He isn't seeing her and she probably didn't take her hero uniform with her, that would be pretty dumb. So if he uses his quirk, she is going to pop up naked in front of them all. Including Kaminari Denki. I'll stay put. I'll stay put. Hagakure yells quickly, admitting defeat. Oh, Aizawa-sensei, Kaminari says, trying his best to appear cheerful. What brings you here? We were just on a walk. Jairu just groans in emotional and mental pain. Aizawa agrees with her. That was very, very bad. Don't bother. Eraserhead announces as Kaminari shrinks a little under his gaze. Then he frees them all, putting them right in front of him. Hagakure, line up. He then adds while pointing to an empty space at the edge of the group. I'm here. Hagakure announces 5 seconds later, informing him that she moved to the position as demanded. A bit slow but good. Now, explain yourselves. Eraserhead then says, glaring at the problem children in front of him. Jairu is probably the group's brains. And the speaker. Or that's how Eraserhead is interpreting their arrangement. I mean, Japan is the state that it is, and we know that bad things happen outside of it, and, we just didn't want to wait until graduation so we, not a good speaker, at least now the stress is probably eating her up, but the best they have. So you, decided to go vigilante. Eraserhead says while totally not parodying her with the Listen, I really appreciate the willingness to help others. But I should technically expel you all for this. You know that? They go white as a sheet. Even the unfamiliar girl. So she is probably from UA, just from a different class. I said that I should, not that I will. That's still on the fence. What have you done thus far? Just minor things? Kyoka replies. She is normally way more confident. Then again, normally she isn't facing her scary teacher in such circumstances. We aren't doing much. We helped some cats off the trees, found a lost dog, technically stopped 2 robberies by calling the nearby heroes, and, we might have apprehended a D-rank villain but he attacked us first so it was fully legal? Of course they read the Knuckle Duster smash hit book. Eraserhead isn't even surprised. Jairu did all but quote it. Don't attack anyone, just patrol the area and call the heroes or the police. Do not operate on your own, always walk in a group. If you are spotted and get attacked, self-defense will be perfectly legal. If the enemy looks to be out of your league, they probably are, leave immediately and then call the heroes to avoid being targeted. If you do minor things like helping people's pets or carrying some old person's groceries, nobody is going to report you for illegal quirk usage, but it will help you build the rapport with the locals so that they'll be more likely to look the other way if you'll have to dodge the police/heroes. That was pretty much a good summary of legal vigilantism. It more or less worked, if you excluded the fact that casualties sometimes happened. Alright, Eraserhead sighs. This isn't enough to expel you. There'll be a week-long detention. You didn't manage to get in contact with the local Vigilante Alliance network, considering your rather bad disguises, am I right? They all quickly nod, looking slightly relieved. I'll contact their local headquarters and tell them how to find you. Now they stare. Jairu and Kaminari especially look like they just saw a ghost. Eraserhead, the scary underground hero, acknowledging vigilantism? Is all that Kaminari manages to utter. Jairu is even less vocal. Hagakure seems to have let out something resembling an "Aya? What you are doing isn't exactly illegal at the moment." Eraserhead replies. Knuckleduster's book basically told everyone in the country how to use a self-defense loophole to legalize vigilantism, and the government went fuck it, we need all the help we can get at the moment and appeared completely unable, or more accurately, unwilling, to fix said loophole. To piss him off, but... And if you are oh so interested in helping others, you'll probably keep doing that. So I can as well put you in contact with someone who will help you not kill yourself in the process. By, for example, giving you some actual disguises. Also, you're accompanying me on the patrols until I decide you're passable enough to be on the streets. And if you break the law in any way or degree, I'm going to become your worst nightmare. Got it? They nodded with fervent enthusiasm. Also, if you tell anyone about this, I'm going to become your nightmare's nightmare. Got it? This time the nods are slightly less fervent and more worried. Passable enough. He'll explain to them that they shouldn't even mention their vigilante work in school due to Nedzu having ears everywhere on the way back. Rat probably knows about them, to begin with. She tenses suddenly. I assume your job in your party is to detect trouble and probably non-lethally blast people with your sound waves, yes? She nods. Kaminari, you are probably there as a human taser, yes? The electric user nods. Hagakure is there to be a scout and probably for some ambushes, yes? He hears a meek vocal confirmation. That confirms it. Alright, that's a relatively logical group for lightweight work. Eraserhead admits. You lack firepower, but that's good. You aren't supposed to fight anyone. The last member straightens up, obviously intimidated. She is a teenager with messy black hair. Eraserhead doesn't recognize her. Who are you? Ayako Nakahara. She replies. First year from UA. General course. Kyoka's my internet friend and she invited me to tag along. I see. Eraserhead nods. At least she didn't look like she was lying. Quirk. He sees no outside signs that could have acted as a clue. Quirk detection. She promptly replies. I can detect quirks at a distance. I only get a rough outline of what they are. Like, when I see you, I know that your quirk is about negating something, but I don't know what exactly. Oh, now that's an interesting power to have in the field. Range and accuracy? Eraserhead asks. Normally it's something like 10 meters unless I see the target. She replies. And I detect all quirks in that range. But when I focus really, really hard, I can pick strong quirks at a few kilometers range. I'm mostly here to tell Kyoka who is outside of our weight class. She quickly adds. If Eraserhead's job description wasn't teacher in a hero school, he would probably congratulate Jairu on her extremely logical choice of party members. Jairu herself to detect crime or scout ahead, Kaminari to electrocute people into unconsciousness, Hagakure to distract enemies if things went awry, and Nakahara to tell them. All when to fold and call the heroes. Unfortunately, saying any variant of good job to an active vigilante is just a nope. Eraserhead has standards. Are you interested in heroics? Eraserhead promptly asks. After all, she is a wannabe vigilante. In an All Might hoodie. Eraserhead feels like he is staring down Crawler in that dark alleyway again. Nostalgia hits him like a speeding truck. Just with fewer broken bones. What yeah? She asks, obviously taken aback. But it's not like I could fight robots on the entrance exam, yes? But I was good enough in my theoretical exam that I ended up transferring from my school to the UA's general course. Eraserhead decides to screech at Nedzu to change that abomination of an exam ASAP. Twice as much as he already does. Did someone ever tell you that if you do well enough during the sports festival, you can be transferred from the general course to the heroics course without fighting robots? That's how I managed to get into heroics. Aizawa asks, and he sees her eyes go wide. Of course, no one ever told her. We'll have a talk about potential supplementary combat lessons with me to help you achieve that tomorrow. Now you're all going home. And I'm going to escort you there, because you really, really shouldn't be here. Why? Jairu is surprised. Nothing serious happens around this place. I checked it on the internet. It wasn't an incorrect statement. The territory directly surrounding the Dagoba Labyrinth was the only part of the western Mizudafu that was calm and peaceful. The Abegawa Tenchu Kai was mostly active to the west of it, forming a triangle between the labyrinth and Hosu River, which was a bit of no one's territory. The worst you could encounter there on the street were a handful of thugs, a solid part of them of similar age to the dumbass in front of him. Most of them were taking advantage of the fact that serious names were scared off by the numbers, and ATK was yet to occupy those streets to act as if they owned a space. That's because the Dagoba Labyrinth is apparently inhabited by a group that's giving local villains nightmares. And we are quite close to it, Eraserhead promptly replies. He can see their eyes widen. If you had a connection to the Alliance, you'd know that the entire area is off-limits to them because of that. One vigilante compared it to the Bermuda Triangle, because people vanish here without a trace all the time. Up to A-rank villains and at least a single pro-hero. They are now borderline terrified. But that was the point. Now, as I said, we're going home. Hagakure, I expect you to make a sound every 20 seconds or I'll decide that you escaped and then I'll get very, very mean. The shortest way back makes them walk on the very edge of the labyrinth. It's intimidating, to say the least. The entrance they are passing is a glaring hole in a wall of twisted metal and plastic, extending forward until it all but devours half of a ruined house. Eraserhead calmly ignores the number 13 teenage boy in a black long coat and a gas mask, and number 17 teenage girl with multicolored hair, wearing a hoodie and a plain surgical mask, staring at them. But then he gets a sudden blast of inspiration. Nakahara. The girl jerks up a little in surprise and looks at him. Can you scan the labyrinth for quirks while walking? She shakes her head. Can you decently pretend to have fainted and then scan it while you're laying on the ground? Turns out that this was a possibility. Although, considering the results, it was probably a bad idea. Eraserhead. Alright, so. Eraserhead, what alert level is this unofficial cross-agency task force on? Present. Pretty high, methinks. Sir Nightai. Yes. Eraserhead, what level are we going to be on if we move it 10 levels up? Sir Nightai. Sir Nightai, what is it? Eraserhead, I have news. Eraserhead, horribly, horribly bad news. Eraserhead, probably the worst. Eraserhead, and that's me, the man who hates to complain. Present, say that again. Eraserhead, Sir Nightai, just say it. Eraserhead, first I need someone in you. We might need to reanimate Nedzu after this. Nedzu? Eraserhead, I've run into some UA students doing rookie vigilante work close to the labyrinth. Eraserhead, nothing technically illegal by the Knuckleduster book, and they were really careful about it. Eraserhead, I gave them all detention and some stern talking already, but that's not the point. Eraserhead, one of them was a Yako Nakahara of 1C class. Present Mike, Ayako did what? Eraserhead, we're going to have a serious talk on why did she learn that transferring to Heroics course is a possibility from me, rather than you, despite you being her homeroom teacher, Mike. Present. Nedzu, I remember her. She can detect and differentiate quirks at a distance, yes? Sir Nightai. Sir Nightai, isn't she? Sir Nightai, in the Heroics course. Eraserhead, ask a certain rat what is he compensating for with the size of the murder robots present during the entrance exam, that'll be an answer to you, I'll help you bury the body afterwards. Nedzu, I'm in danger. Sir Nightai, yes you are. Eraserhead, also I told her that I'd help her train for the course transfer, so I'm working on it. Eraserhead, not the point right now. Eraserhead, I had an idea on the way back, and I had her pretend that she fainted close enough to the labyrinth to scan it for quirk signatures. Eraserhead, I have two very bad pieces of news. Sir Nightai, shoot. Eraserhead, she detected 49 quirk signatures within the labyrinth, so either they are holding some villains as captives for some reason or they have some undefined guests, or there are more numbers than we thought. Eraserhead, 49 strong quirk signatures for the record, but she can't tell all details. Class 4 and up though. Sir Nightai, I think I know why Nedzu will need to be reanimated. Eraserhead. Eraserhead, this is just the beginning of the monumentally bad news. Tsukochien? Sir Nightai, what is it? Eraserhead, she was unable to tell me every detail because there was something among them that was partially blinding her. Sir Nightai, Class 6 quirk? Vlad King, didn't we know that already? Eraserhead, no, not by a Class 6 quirk. Sir Nightai? Eraserhead, by 5 Class 6 quirks. Sir Nightai? Nedzu. Ms. Joke, how? Eraserhead, I don't know. Eraserhead, they are supposed to be ultra rare. Tsurunatai, they are. Eraserhead, so why are there 5 of them in Mizudafu, 6 if you include All Might? Tsurunatai, I don't know. But I intend to find out as soon as possible. Present Mike, any details on them? I think she gets some general understanding of the quirks she detects, at least when they are strong. Eraserhead, so you knew details about her quirk and you still didn't talk with her about the transfer. Eraserhead, this is going to be a serious talk, very serious. Present Eraserhead, only a very rough one. She sums up all fire quirks as fire, for example. Eraserhead, 1. Transfer. 2. Return. 3. Knowledge. Control. 5. Quirk, that left her seriously confused. Eraserhead, she also picked up 9 Class 5 signatures. They were strong enough to be visible. Eraserhead, 1. Wrath. 2. Blood. 3. Hero. 4. Strategy. 5. Surface. 6. Ice. 7. Shadow. 8. Memory. 9. Change. Eraserhead, she thinks that there were a few more, but undeveloped. She sometimes doesn't pick up details off of young children. Eraserhead, she thinks that every other signature, save for the 5 plus 9 plus probably 4 to 5, is a Class 4 as mentioned earlier, but the details of it are suppressed by Class 6 and Class 5 signatures. Eraserhead, now can someone explain to me how did we lose 49 children with quirks that powerful? Eraserhead, I get it that quirk trafficking is on the rise, I get it that quirks grow stronger as time passes, but this is just damn ridiculous. Eraserhead, and sad. Ms. Joke, mostly sad. Eraserhead, yes. And illogical. Tsurunatai, Nedzu, alright. Nedzu, I'm calm now. Nedzu, on a crisis amount of tea, but completely calm. Nedzu, I also have an idea. But you'll probably not like it. Nedzu, I'll need a day or 2 to be ready to talk about it. Tsurunatai, I finished my investigation into Marksman's impersonation. Nedzu, what did you find out? Tsurunatai, he doesn't remember having his blood drunk by anyone. But he does donate blood regularly. Tsurunatai, I visited the local hospital. They had a break-in a few days before the incident. Someone ransacked their on-site blood bank. They lost some of Marksman's blood. Nedzu, that confirms it. Carmilla requires the blood of whoever she is transforming into for her quirk to work. Tsurunatai, that's the end of the good news. Time for the bad news. Tsurunatai, the break-in happened not long after that charity campaign with heroes donating blood. Eraserhead, well shit. Tsurunatai, numbers stole a lot of non-hero blood, probably to cover their tracks and to make sure that anyone investigating the matter wouldn't know what they were looking for exactly, but the hospital confirmed that Carmilla has or had access to the blood of Present Mike, Midnight, Snipe, Cementos, Lunch Rush, Hound Dog, Power Loader, Kamui Woods, MP Lady, Death Arms, Edge Shot, Invincible, Valiant, Emoji and Best Genist. Present them. Tsurunatai, blood can be stored for something around 42 days, but for as long as we don't know how her quirk works, we can't be 100% sure that the danger has passed. It most likely did, but what bothers me is why did they steal all of that blood? Tsurunatai, it was just a pointless danger to themselves, as the hospital was most likely going to connect the dots and figure out that the hero's blood was the target. Eraserhead, we'll find out eventually. Eraserhead, Vox sounds like someone who doesn't do illogical things and that appears illogical. Eraserhead, Rad is still working on his secret plan. Nedzu, I should have it ready tomorrow. Eraserhead, fine, I have something to do today either way. Eraserhead delayed the meeting for a while, mostly because he still tried to get a read on his student. Bakugo Katsuki had a rather colorful personality, to say the least. Way too loud for Aizawa's preferences, but he couldn't deny that the kid had potential. Lots of it, in fact. He preferred to go about it a bit more subtly. Expelling someone for past bullying when they could secrete nitroglycerin at will sounded like a bad idea. Bakugo would either manage to become a hero in a different school or, well, turn worse. So vigilantism with high collateral damage. Or villainy. Yes, Eraserhead expelled people easily. However, you had to actually earn it and make him realize that no, you were a hopeless case that was going to kill everyone if you ever don a hero uniform officially. His famous expulsions? That was a day one vibe check for the kids. None of that went on the record. And the expulsion as a whole typically lasted for about an hour, with the students not given the time to leave the school. He always grabbed one of the students beforehand and explained the situation to them, typically the one that he believed after the exam and reading their files, to not need a proper shakeup. This was to avoid the expelled student doing something incredibly stupid on spot after Eraserhead left the area. This year, it was Momo Yaoyorozu. In short, it was all calculated, with Eraserhead being more subtle about it than people gave him credit for. Frankly speaking, his observation of Bakugo gave him some mixed signals. He was aggressive, but not overtly. Sure, he was a mouthful and pretty intimidating for a kid, but always stopped before anything that could be considered a physical aggression. If anything, Aizawa eventually decided that his aggression is just limited to words. He felt no need to get involved in that. There was a market for verbally abrasive and headstrong heroes, the sort that could appeal to the youth by being ready to yell at someone, even the journalists, that they were fucking idiots. Eraserhead was supposed to help those kids grow into successful heroes, not make them into mass-produced copies of identical heroes. Pro heroes, especially the top heroes, were individualities. Perhaps less aggression and more heated temperament? Nah, it was best to keep it to abrasive personality. Plus a tendency for heavy swearing. No signs of bullying. Then again, it was UA. The hero course didn't interact a lot with other courses except when visiting the support course students for equipment upgrades. There were very few timid people in the hero course, and those that were there, like Koji Koda, had no shortage of people to step up to protect them. In the end, Eraserhead decided to confront his student. He told Bakugo to stay after the homeroom and waited for the class to empty. A lot of students gave the kid some worrying stares, but he didn't seem to care. What is it? Bakugo didn't wait for too long before trying to speak. In an almost oddly subdued way for him, then again he was facing a teacher. That probably contributed. The kid was loud, not stupid. I need to talk with you about something, Eraserhead announces, and Bakugo looks at him with his eyes narrow. I heard about your past with Midoriya Izuku. Honestly, it's almost hilarious. If they needed more proof that Vox is Midoriya Izuku, it was this. The fact that people reacted to mention of the latter in the same way as of the former. So a momentary freeze of facial expressions and then with being visibly distraught. There isn't much to talk about. Bakugo eventually replies. His face is a mask, and honestly, Aizawa can barely recognize him. My school fucked up. My classmates fucked up. My teachers fucked up. I fucked up most of them all. Can we not talk about this? Elaborate on fucked up, please? Eraserhead ignores the last part. He is here to get some proper answers on how to deal with Bakugo. And with Aldra Jr. High, Netsu had some questions to ask as well. And, perhaps, by some stretch of logic, with Vox. The familiar scowl is there for a few seconds. Then it vanishes, though not before Bakugo mumbles a curse. So the assholes from the school wanted to get promoted from being teaching extras. Real fucking hard, Bakugo finally says. So they wanted to get some major heroes out of their school. It was all about powerful fucking quirks. Izuku was quirkless and, fuck, it started before that shitty school. Another scowl. Eraserhead says nothing, just watches. Bakugo is talking to him, that's good enough. He genuinely expected the explosive teen to just run away or something equally impulsive and illogical. People were always telling me that I have a powerful quirk and that I was going to be a wonderful hero. Bakugo continues. And Izuku. He really wanted to be a hero, despite being quirkless. I had the dumb fucking idea that he was looking down on me when he was saying that. The shrink I went to said that people praised me for my quirks so much that I grew dependent on it. And I was, inside, afraid that I had nothing else going on except for the quirk. So when Izuku said that he wanted to be a hero like me, but without the quirk, I felt threatened. I felt like him succeeding would make the one pillar of my ego just poof into smoke. So I lashed out at him. But he still kept trying to be my friend, no matter what I did. The scowl returns, but this time it feels almost painful. Eventually we got to Aldra. Finally Bakugo picks up the pace again. It was probably the closest thing to hell to him. And I contributed. A lot. Especially as this happened around the time his dad died, and his mom was ugh. 1 year in, the fire happened. He goes silent for a while. He is clearly mulling something over. I told him to jump off the roof a few days before the fire. What? This finally draws a reaction from Eraserhead. Bakugo's suicide-baited Vox. I heard my classmates telling him to do it. Bakugo is looking at his feet at this point. I fucking parroted it after them like a dumb fucking idiot I was. When the old hag told me that something happened to Izuku, for a few seconds I thought that he listened to me. He remained silent for a few seconds. I told my parents what the school did to him. At some point I just started talking about what I did to him. Then there was the therapy and, fuck. Eraserhead stares in silence and honest shock. There are actual tears on Bakugo's face, something he never expected he would see. I didn't even get to apologize to him. It's a very Bakugo way to cry. With a scowl. Frankly, Eraserhead can't decide if the kid in front of him is more angry or sad. Or maybe he is just angry at his own sadness. Yeah, that would probably explain a lot. He even clenches his fists, probably in hopes of punching said sadness out. Eraserhead makes a decision. It's not exactly the most logical one, and Nezu will probably call him out on it. But Bakugo is his student, with an emotional baggage that no student should have. He is a living bomb, god fucking damn it. His emotional state is important. You might have an occasion to do that, Eraserhead says. Bakugo freezes for a second, as if he wasn't sure how to react or how to even understand what he just heard. I'm not talking to you about him for no reason. A hero I know had a run-in with a green-haired teenager whom we believe might have been Midoriya Izuku. Principal Nezu reinvestigated the fire and is almost certain that your friend and his mother faked their deaths. Bakugo just stares. In complete shock. The tears are still going down. It's as if his teacher's words just broke him completely. This lasts for a good 10 seconds before he starts working again. Where is he? He takes a step forward with an interrupted motion, making him look like he was about to grab his teacher before he remembered who he is facing. You have to do exactly nothing. Eraserhead interrupts him with a finger poke to the chest. Just enough to push him a step back. This is an incredibly delicate investigation, and you doing anything on you would risk way more than you can possibly imagine. Including Midoriya Izuku's life if that truly is him. You will not tell anyone, including your parents, until I tell you that you can do it without putting anyone in danger. You will not try to look out for him. Leave that to me. All that you need to know for now is that he isn't in danger. If anything, he was the danger to others. But Eraserhead doesn't mention it. You have the occasion to prove to yourself and everyone else that you actually grew up as a person since Aldra. To prove to me that not expelling you on the spot over you suicide baiting a child is a good decision. Don't mess it up. I won't. Bakugo stays silent for maybe a second. How can I help? By telling me everything you know about him. Eraserhead replies. From every detail of your common history that you can think of to his favorite food. Every detail, even if it's incriminating to you. Got it? Eraserhead just finished a length talk with Bakugo Katsuki about Midoriya Izuku. Present Mike. Oh, so that's why he didn't show up to my English lesson. Hounding my little listeners is not nice, Shota. Eraserhead at Nezu, you're going to have to bring Ryo Inui into this. Bakugo has lots of things to unpack and find a way to deal with. Eraserhead, I don't want an emotionally unstable literal living bomb out there. Eraserhead, one endeavor is bad enough. Nezu, consider it done. What did you find out? Eraserhead, you didn't watch us through the cameras? Nezu, maybe I did, but I still want you to narrate it because it tells me what you think about it.
Eraserhead.
Eraserhead, fine. So, in Bakugo's own words, Izuku was a way better hero in the elementary school than I'll be after graduating from this school. Present Mike, Bakugo said that? Midnight, the kid that keeps telling everyone that he will be the next #1 hero. Eraserhead, yeah, I was equally surprised. Eraserhead, and don't have me started on the waterworks. Present Mike, The what? Eraserhead. Apparently Midoriya kept trying to help people, regardless of what they were doing to them. Eraserhead. When they were 6 years old, Bakugo fell into a stream from a bridge, something like 1 meter down. Other kids were mostly laughing their asses about it, but Izuku jumped down, just in a more controlled way, to help him stand up. Eraserhead. When they were 10 years old, Midoriya almost got run over by a car because he leapt in to push a kid who was about to be run over by it. It was apparently one of the kids that were meanest to him. Eraserhead. He was an extreme All Might fan as well, watched his debut video hundreds of times, kept saying that he wanted to be like him and save people with a smile. His room was full of his merch, plus a handful of others' heroes, like Maruko and Present Mike, but much less of it. Eraserhead. Soon before going to Aldra, his father died in some villain attack apparently, and Izuku started to change for the worse. Eraserhead grew more and more withdrawn. Eraserhead. At some point Bakugo overheard his mother talking with Midoriya Inko through a phone. Apparently Midoriya threw all of his hero merch out and set most of it on fire. Eraserhead. Then Aldra did everything short of the faculty organizing public beatings of him for his quirklessness to make his life even worse, and, after the first year of it ended, the fire happened. Eraserhead. Discuss. Present Mike at Nedzu. I have questions. Nedzu. I've almost finished compiling the necessary evidence. Aldra Junior High is going to be thoroughly destroyed in 2 to 3 weeks. Tsukachi will probably let you and Eraserhead be there when the arrests are made. Present Mike. I no longer have questions. Sir Nightai. If I were to speculate, losing his father to a villain made him decide that heroes weren't there to save him, hence his dislike of them. Which is a bit childish motivation, but, well, he was a child. Nedzu. His motivation might be a bit different than you think. Or perhaps have more grounding in facts. Sir Nightai? Nedzu. I've investigated Midoriya Inko's injury. I'm at this point 95% sure that she was paralyzed waist down and lost her sister in a fire that started because a hero screwed up. I can see HPSC's handiwork in the handling of the incident, but I'm not certain which hero was responsible. Nedzu. Considering Mischief's connections, she probably knew about the HPSC being involved. Eraserhead. Shit. Midnight. So first a hero paralyzed his mother waist down and killed his aunt, then another one failed to save his father. Poor kid. Eraserhead. Add the fact that Aldra was trying to, apparently, get some of their students to become heroes to gain fame as a school. And they considered bullying quirkless people like him as a motivation for other students to train their quirks. Eraserhead. In some cases train their quirks on quirkless people, while prattling that they are going to become heroes. Vlad King. Fucking shit. Vlad King. If anything, I'm positively surprised that he's still trying to save people in his own way. I saw people decide that they want to see the world burn over a fraction of what happened to him. Eraserhead. Eraserhead. And now this kid gathered almost 50 kids like him, is probably training them at least in quirk usage, if not in general combat, just in case heroes/villains came for them, and every single one of them has a powerful quirk, and I still want to know how the hell did he find so many of them. Eraserhead. And don't have me started on how, yes, I'm going to use a sparing compliment, deal with it, intelligent he is, if he is truly the person who set the numbers up as a whole. Eraserhead. They were around for roughly 2 years, and the heroes only found out because he decided to save me in the name of some old acquaintance of his. Despite being responsible for something like 40 disappearances of notable criminals. Eraserhead. If we push him too much and he goes full villain. Present. Eraserhead. Yeah, what Mike said. Eraserhead, and we won't even be able to fight against them full force, because they are children, and if anything happens to them, especially several of them at once, the press vultures will just eat everyone involved alive. Eraserhead. Sending in All Might is a nope because we can't have the symbol of peace beat a bunch of kids around. Eraserhead. This is an absolute definition of a nightmare. Eraserhead. Especially if you include the fact that the group in question has de facto built themselves a fortress, with a confusing internal layout, probably some traps, and who knows how many powerful quirk users that we know nothing about, as already stated. Tsukachien. I agree. This certainly is a nightmare. Sir Nightai, we have to save those kids. But the problem is, they don't want to be saved. Worst of all, a psychologist can deal with 1 or 2 kids like that, but here we have something like 50, and they are probably mutually reinforcing their beliefs. Sir Nightai, not to mention the fact that taking one to therapy will probably make the remaining 48 go villain and try to break them out. Although this is just a probability, because we don't know anything on just how the numbers work on the inside. Sir Nightai, are they afraid? Are they happy? Are they sad? What sort of things do they have access to while living inside the labyrinth? Just the healing quirk, or do they have someone with an actual understanding of how healthcare works? What sort of person Vox is in front of them? Nedzu, my little plan might help in finding that out. But Eraserhead will probably attempt to murder me for it. Sir Nightai, ready to finally describe what it is? Nedzu, considering what Eraserhead just said, it might be a logical thing to do. Nedzu, basically speaking, Vox will not trust any adult. The closest thing to an adult associate he has right now is the Abegawa Tenchukai, and even they know only a few things and were never allowed inside the labyrinth. Nedzu, sending Edge Shot or any other stealth hero will probably end up with them detected with Vox's quirk, and then things get ugly. Nedzu, so the only option I can think of is to use someone who isn't an adult. Eraserhead, hell no. Nedzu, Aizawa, please, let me explain. Eraserhead, you are going to have one of our students try to join the numbers, aren't you? Vlad King, and probably from one of the first-year heroic courses, because others are too old or don't have quirks powerful enough. Presentmic, everyone say no. Minute, Eraserhead, Vlad King, Tsukochin, Ms. Joke, Sir Nightai. Sir Nightai, this is a horrible idea. And I'm being delicate here. Nedzu, even if the student in question is probably going to end up expelled and in jail soon enough? Eraserhead, what? Nedzu, one of the UA students was involved in a handful of robberies. Nothing particularly nasty, it was motivated by a complicated home situation and they targeted people and groups that were insured. No one was injured. Nedzu, they stopped even before coming to UA, and appear to be doing their best to become a hero. But it appears that the police are still investigating them and made a bit of a breakthrough recently. Nedzu, I could, technically, make sure that the trail goes cold. The intentions were noble and nobody was hurt. Besides, I believe that they will make a splendid hero if given a chance. But they know how to act. Have a true backstory on the ready. They even have some small street rep. Eraserhead, you are going to blackmail one of your students to have them go undercover. Nedzu, I believe that offer a chance for redemption is a better wording, Aizawa. Sir Nightai, if we take the maximum amount of precautions, this could work. Eraserhead, precautions. Sir Nightai, we have All Might on our side. If the spy knows that All Might will barge in if they don't leave the labyrinth unharmed, it is a certain motivator to not harm them even if they are caught. Tsukachien, do any of you realize that Nedzu just announced his readiness to sabotage a police investigation in front of me? Eraserhead, Tsukachien, alright, you can continue. Presentnik, don't get corrupted by them, Mr. Policeman. Tsukachien, I'm willing to get corrupted a lot if it means that 49 living time bombs are off the street and get normal homes. Instead of living in a junkyard. Presentnik, you know what that's based? Eraserhead at Vlad King opinions? Vlad King, it sucks, but it might be the only option to proceed. We can't exactly just make a bust, right? We'd have to amass dozens of pro-heroes and going in blind would just be monumentally stupid, if not suicidal. Especially if the numbers are as prepared as we expect them to be. Eraserhead at Ms. Joke and you? Ms. Joke, I hate it, TBH. But if it's a hero core student, they technically signed up for danger. Internships are dangerous enough today, this is worse, but, honestly, it also might not be, if Vox has a soft spot for kids. And it seems that he does. Eraserhead, shit. Eraserhead, I get the logic behind it, but I hate it. Eraserhead, sending someone of that age and inexperience undercover is just straight bad. Eraserhead, especially alone. Nedzu, they don't have to go there alone. Nedzu, we can send the other first-year hero student with a secret villainous past with them. Eraserhead, that's better. Eraserhead, hold up. Eraserhead, we can send the other who?